Chapter 263, Slaughters Again, Boom. After that hit, the zombie collapsed on the ground. Who? Yi Xuan was breathing heavily as he just now used his most powerful attack. He had been hiding it from the zombie all this time and used it right when he saw an opening. Yi Xuan was assuming that there was a small part of wisdom still present in that zombie's mind, so he remained patient, and even if he was facing tough moments during the fight, he still continued to wait till the time was right and finished off the zombie in one shot. Yi Xuan took a break and let Phoenix Regeneration heal his injuries, though this time, the consumption of life essence was not much. Then, he dug out the zombie Dan from its body and immediately flew in the direction where the team of experts was still fighting with the other zombie. Right now, Emperor Chen and the other experts were extremely exhausted. They were having a hard time dealing with a half-step legendary zombie. It was rampaging, killing people, and almost no one could stop it. Even the joint attacks of Emperor Chen and Qing Su were not enough to stop it or inflict serious injuries. It was being difficult for these experts to attack the zombie due to the fluctuations in world laws surrounding the zombie. The disparity in strength was too huge to surmount, and dozens of human experts had already been killed by it. Only 300 individuals were still alive, which basically indicated that the team of human experts had faced heavy losses in this regard. Emperor Chen gave out a long and loud battle cry and produced an avalanche of energy leaking out of his body. The energy condensed to form a shadow that looked very similar to him, except it had a pair of abnormally cold eyes. Although he was having a hard time dealing with this zombie, he was not at all scared of it and attacked without hesitation. This was a terrifying attack skill where he was using his own shadow as a backup. He could not throw in the towel, especially when Yi Xuan was risking his own life to distract a zombie and he was doing it on his own. But here, so many people were together and still unable to deal with one zombie. This was simply a big blow to his pride and self-esteem. Although he knew that Yi Ziwen's case was special as he happened to have a strong body, his pride still would not allow him to admit defeat. He wanted to be stronger than anyone no matter what. Emperor Chen's attack also incurred huge fluctuations in the world laws. It was obvious that he had already started to meditate and comprehend world laws, preparing to enter the half-step legendary realm. Therefore, law suppression was not working on him. One could notice this trait in his violent and frightening imposing aura. Boom! Emperor Chen's fist blasted on the zombie's tough body and exploded into a burst of terrifying rippling waves of light. It seemed like this fist was aiming to destroy the stars. Boom! This punch was extremely terrifying, but the zombie simply disregarded its own safety and retaliated by throwing its fist at him. Although the zombie's fist was basically a clenched bone claw, it still caused a massive explosion as if to blow away the universe itself and reopen the world of chaos. Stop! At this time, Qing Su shouted loudly and his spiritual voice echoed in the area. As a result of that, the zombie's movements slowed down a bit and Emperor Chen, who was sitting on his pet lion, managed to dodge quickly and somehow escaped the range of the fist attack. Even if a half of the zombie's body was severely injured by Emperor Chen's attack, it was still very terrifying to fight against and held tyrannical prowess. Emperor Chen's eyes were filled with anger. He was, what you'd call, a slave of his pride. He was sitting straight on his pet lion like a mountain and suddenly rushed towards that zombie. He once again used the same attack to finish off the zombie in one fell swoop. Boom! The power capable of shattering stars once again broke out and spread sections of Tao everywhere. Qing Su was also closely following him and staying by his side. This is what one would call immeasurable revere. Emperor Chen's shadow that had stayed behind him all this time suddenly resonated with the flashing Tao. It is said that you are in Tao and Tao is within you. Right now, this shadow had thoroughly merged with Tao, thereby increasing its power drastically. Boom! Emperor Chen, his shadow, and Qing Su together attacked the zombie and swept away mighty shock waves in all directions. Bang! But, in a blink of an eye, his shadow dissipated and both he and his pet lion were sent flying miles away from there. He spurted out blood from his mouth and blood was also oozing out from several wounds on his body. Ching Su was also sent flying all the way until he was caught by his pet crane. This was really a horrifying collision. Meanwhile, the zombie killed 2 more people when everyone resorted to all sorts of martial arts and divine tools to attack it. They basically tried to take advantage of this explosion as an opportunity to attack it. Boom! 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 It was a terrible collision and the zombie certainly wasn't able to react rapidly. By the time it made its move, it had already been attacked and severely injured by the joint attack from almost 300 experts. However, this joint attack was not enough to completely eliminate it. Its whole body was covered in its own blood and looked like a tattered sack of rotten meat. But it was still roaring and its formidable pressure was frightening people, making it difficult for them to fight it head-on. Emperor Chen's body was also covered in wounds but he still stood firmly. He blundered by underestimating a half-step legendary zombie and by also underestimating the gap between half-step legendary realm and truth 9th peak. Not to mention, this zombie was already under the suppression that appeared once in 1,000 years. So, in other words, if it was at its full potential then no one would have survived till now. Suddenly, there came a distant howling sound, and the very next instant, a human figure arrived at a tyrannical speed and struck with a long blade, instantly chopping the zombie, from head to foot, into 2 halves. Is that Yishuan? Yes, Yishuan is back, but wait, where is that other zombie? What happened to it? Yes, don't tell me he killed that zombie. That's impossible. Everyone was extremely shocked by his unexpected arrival. Was it actually possible that Yishuan actually managed to kill a half-step legendary zombie all by himself? The very thought of it was striking terror in their hearts, but they had to accept the reality that Yishuan was standing in front of them and was uninjured. Emperor Chen was shocked the most and staring at Yishuan as if he was witnessing a miracle. Yizaiwan's plan was to distract that zombie, but if he really killed it then this was really no different than a miracle in the eyes of other experts. If I cannot do it, we all will die. All of them remembered the statement he made before departing, succinct but powerful. This kind of monstrous self-confidence was simply known to invincible beings. Yizaiwan's golden body released a golden beam of light that instantly crashed into that zombie's almost bisected body. Then he shot his palm out that released a golden dragon into the sky. Roar! The zombie was roaring with a look of terror and confusion in its eyes. It also threw its iron claw fist at Yishuan. Boom! Its tyrannical flesh was actually blown apart by Yizaiwan's golden dragon. Afterward, Yishuan grabbed its arms and tore them off its body, which made painful heart-wrenching sounds. Then he threw those arms far away from its body. Right now, Yishuan was at his peak condition and nothing could stop him. But this zombie was weakened and injured. Yishuan once again pounded his palm on its torso and that resulted in an explosion. Everyone was alarmed and afraid, thinking in their hearts that who was actually more terrifying, Yishuan or zombie? The way Yishuan was dismembering the zombie in front of everyone, they were astonished as to how he was even able to do that. They obviously did not know that Yishuan possessed the golden body of gods. The zombie's roars were scary and terror-inspiring. All of a sudden, there was a great explosion caused by Yishuan's palm attack and he managed laying a major blow to its life force. In the end, he finished it off by stamping on its chest and crushing its chest region. The golden divinities crawled from his leg into its body and destroyed all the evil spirits occupying its body. Now the only thing left was taking its core down. Chapter 264, Supreme Figure. Everyone was stunned and giving dumbfounded looks to Yishuan. They couldn't believe their own eyes. The zombie was literally unable to fight back and Yishuan so effortlessly killed it in front of them as if it was such an easy task. Yishuan managed to complete a task that such a large team of experts was unable to do. This was simply a miracle in their eyes. Yishuan was merely an expert of Truth 7th stage while their team had several experts at the peak of Truth 9th stage. But Yishuan managed to kill a half-step legendary zombie whereas their entire team couldn't do it. So how did Yishuan succeed? And what was the real extent of his power? Emperor Chen and few other experts actually knew how Yi Shiwen was able to kill that zombie because it was already seriously injured and had also exhausted most of its energy. In comparison, Yi Ziwen's combat effectiveness was at its peak condition, not to mention the zombie was under suppression and it was mostly relying on its formidable body to fight, but once again, Yi Shiwen had an advantage of having a similarly formidable and uninjured body. In short, the zombie's defeat was inevitable the moment Yi Shiwen became its opponent. However, only a few experts were able to figure out the facts behind this miracle. Also, it would not be wrong to say that if there was someone else in place of Yi Shiwen, they wouldn't be able to kill the zombie the way he did it. Although some experts were aware of the special circumstances under which Yi Shiwen killed the zombie, they were still very shocked by a scene in which how easily a half-step legendary zombie was killed by a guy who lacked 3 levels in comparison. This was just insane and totally outrageous for the experts who were at higher levels. Yi Ziwen's dominating aura, as well as self-confidence, was inducing envy and restlessness in their hearts. However, right now, they did not have time and intention to be sighing and feeling that way because the allied armies of demon beasts and ghost soldiers were indulged in a crazy battle with skeletons and zombies and were slowly advancing towards the peak, slaughtering and pushing back the undead along the way. It was obvious that this battle was approaching its most tragic phase, so they must finish their mission as soon as possible. The Allied forces were doing their best to contain the undead army and push them backward, but it could be seen that they were not going to last very long. The urgent matter at hand was to take off the seal and end this crazy battle. "We are running out of time, so let's hurry," Yi Shiwen said. "We need to go to the summit as soon as possible to take off the seal, otherwise, we won't have a way out of this mess. The battlefield is quickly shifting towards the peak, and trust me, guys, you don't want to be anywhere close to that battlefield." Yi Shiwen was aware of the consequences they would have to face if they did not take off the seal quickly, and he also knew that they did not have a lot of time left either. The fierce undead army was truly horrifying, so the team of human experts couldn't afford to waste time as they needed to take off the seal before the Allied forces would completely exhaust their strength. Irrespective of their envy and hatred towards Yi Shiwen, the experts had to agree with his words. Right now, rather than bickering and being envious, they needed to show courage and concern towards the situation and must act as fast as possible. The team of experts once again rushed towards the summit, meanwhile, avoiding formidable zombies and skeletons on the way. They were also steering away from the palaces since almost every palace was inhabited by terrifying monsters of the legendary realm and above, but they seemed to be imprisoned inside the palaces and couldn't come out. Finally, the team took a section of road that led them straight to the summit. This section of road was too terrible and the team bumped into a few half-step legendary zombies on the way, but the good news was that these zombies appeared alone, on separate times, and the team somehow managed to either evade or distract them, whichever was deemed necessary in the situation at hand. On the hilltop, they saw a magnificent palace spread across the entire summit. It looked like a sky palace and its size was almost equivalent to that of a small town. Yi Shiwen carefully observed the entire palace and saw a giant stele hanging in the sky, right above the palace. There were big characters engraved over this giant stele and looked very dazzling. A terrifying aura was transmitting from that stele as if trying to suppress the entire world. However, a terrifying aura was surging from the palace also and rising into the sky. The palace's aura was confronting the stele's aura that was pressing down from above, thereby creating equilibrium between the two tyrannical auras in the buffer region between giant stele and palace. In this buffer region, space was collapsing and restoring itself frequently in a cyclic process, and one could also see cold pitch-black debris of space floating there. The experts were deeply affected by this scene, which was quite terror-inspiring. Even Yi Shiwen was no exception because he sensed a rogue feeling of terror lurking in his own heart. Seeing space collapsing and restoring right in front of their eyes, it seemed as if they were standing on the edge of the world where two worlds were colliding with each other, giving rise to such an apocalyptic scene. However, they had no time to think about the reason behind this phenomenon, rather they immediately went towards the palace. A signboard was floating high in the air. Heaven's Peak Palace. It was hard to speculate the level of the civilization that left behind such a legacy thousands of years ago. Yi Shuwen did not wait and immediately rushed forward towards the palace. As soon as they entered the palace compound, they heard intermittent sounds of a bell ringing unceasing. Yes, it was the same bell ringing that has summoned these young geniuses to the Demon Island. They rushed all the way inside the palace compound and actually saw an ancient clock bell ringing constantly. Ding dong. Ding dong. Ding dong. The bell was ringing non-stop and also releasing fluctuating sound waves, but only in its vicinity due to some kind of barrier. The answer to this was a huge seal that was hovering over this ancient bell and releasing a mysterious glow that contained a dominating power, very similar to the power contained in world laws but much more intense. Everyone noticed that the seal's power was restricting the bell's power. That's the seal we are looking for. An expert said aloud while his eyes were totally focused on the seal. The tomb slave had informed them about this seal and also told them that they must remove the seal in order to quell the undead army. While they were all set to finish the task, all of a sudden, the palace doors made a squeak sound and opened wide. And a tall figure with a demonic aura wantonly revolving around him came out. His form was blurred and fuzzy and basically looked like a human shadow with a pair of red eyes. He also possessed a terror-inspiring demonic aura. The experts suddenly stopped when they saw this shadowy figure and instinctively took one step back. They had seen a lot of weird things on this island, but this was probably the weirdest of them all. Ding dong. The bell suddenly began to ring faster, and even though a seal was placed on it, it still managed to shoot a condensed form of sonic energy at that shadow. The shadowy figure lifted his claws, directly grabbed that mass of sonic energy and tore it apart. Boom! At this time, the fluctuating mass of energy surrounding the bell suddenly condensed and seemed to have actually opened up a portal, and all of a sudden, a celestial figure slowly walked out of it. He was clad in an emperor's long robe and possessed an unimaginable imposing aura. The human experts were so much affected by his presence that they felt like bowing down on their knees and worshipped this divine being. And at this time, Tianyuan Mirror suddenly began to shiver violently as if feeling a hint of provocation. Yes, Yi Shuwen had never seen Tianyuan Mirror acting this way no matter what kind of tyrannical expert he had faced so far. Yi Mo, what's happening here? Yi Shuwen asked loudly in his mind. But he suddenly realized that Yi Mo was fully suppressed inside Tianyuan Mirror and did not dare to say anything. It seemed as if Yi Mo no longer existed inside the mirror and had completely disappeared without a trace. Something like this happened only once when that tyrannical sword expert had suddenly appeared and used his sword intention on by Ma Jiao disciples. But even back then, Yi Mo was not this much scared, which indicated that this celestial figure was definitely an emperor-level expert. After coming out of the portal that appeared on the bell, the celestial emperor slowly walked away from the bell but soon bumped into the seal. However, he quickly bypassed the barrier and looked coldly at that shadow. As soon as the celestial emperor walked out of the barrier, no one in the team of human experts was able to bear the incredible pressure and kneeled down on the ground. Even Emperor Chen and the other top experts were no exceptions. In fact, even Yi Shuwen was not able to resist this pressure despite having the support of Tianyuan Mirror. Ever since he obtained Tianyuan Mirror, he was never bothered by his opponent's coercion, which was more of a joke in his eyes. Tianyuan Mirror was a top-tier divine tool of the Devil King himself, so only those experts, who were at a level higher than him, would be able to suppress Yi Shuwen. Therefore, Yi Shuwen had never experienced suppression from coercion. Even a high-level legendary expert wouldn't succeed to bring Yi Shuwen to his knees by simply using their imposing aura. However, now that he did not have the shelter of Tianyuan Mirror, he immediately felt a terrifying pressure rampaging upon his body. Insolent fool! The Celestial Emperor spoke, and it seemed as if his words were promulgating the law to be enforced. As soon as he said these words, everyone felt like they did the biggest mistake of their life by coming here and must apologize if they wanted to live. But the Celestial Emperor did not even look at Yi Shuwen and the others, who, like a group of ants, did not deserve his attention at all. Those words were actually meant for that shadow. The Celestial Emperor looked sternly at the shadow, and space around him began to fluctuate and disintegrate. Chapter 265, shocking secret in the eyes of such a supreme figure, this mortal world was insignificant in a way, and same could be considered about the mortals. It could be seen that he had experienced innumerable eras and must have been to several worlds. It was as if he had crossed the river of time to appear here, and it was fair to say that mortals wouldn't be able to comprehend such an entity. He possessed the kind of imposing aura only known to have been displayed by great tyrants of the universe. The kind of suppression that could make everyone submit to this domineering figure, just like the legendary gods mentioned in fables. Even if everyone knew that this was possibly not his main body, but seeing such a supreme-level figure standing right in front of them still made them have a feeling of prostrating themselves sincerely and worship him. I would not kneel down in front of anyone, never, even when the god itself appears in front of me. Emperor Qin clenched his teeth and was enduring the incredible pressure. The other experts heard him growl and saw how he was unwilling to surrender to this supreme figure and not willing to kneel down. His legs were firmly fixed on the ground as if two iron pillars were nailed to the ground, unwilling to bend. His face was covered in cold sweat and his entire body was trembling fiercely. He was a very stubborn man, indeed. Not just Emperor Qin, even Qing Su, Yi Shiwen, Warhawk and the other top experts were also refusing to kneel down and were still somehow standing. Their stance was simple: humiliation was worse than dying, so they would rather die standing instead of kneeling down and live. These were the few experts who possessed invincible will along with great ambitions. Those who wanted to dominate the entire world. In that case, how could they just bend their knees and prostrate in front of anyone? Indeed, this supreme figure seemed to come from a superior race from ancient times, but what they were seeing was certainly just a shell of the original being, and if they bowed down in front of it then it would utterly destroy their indomitable hearts. After experiencing this, one thing was guaranteed: that the impression left by this domineering celestial figure would never ever leave their hearts. At this time, all of the demon beast cubs, namely Golden Lion, Yellow Crane, Dragon Butterfly and Golden Winged Eagle, felt weak in the legs and fell down on the ground and began to cry loudly with large bundles of tears rolling down from their eyes. The Golden Lion cub was fortunately quite ignorant and did not understand what was going on, but the wolf cub undeniably possessed far more wisdom than the other cubs and was a lot more mature as well. But at this time, he was the saddest one, and his howling sound was indicating the intense sadness in his heart. He was crying tears of sorrow, not like an ignorant cub that cries for himself, but like an adult that was crying due to a serious reason that was causing him pain. His sorrowful crying voice and howls, extremely pitiful appearance explained his tragic state. Even Mu Ling was confused because he could not understand how a foul-mouthed, yet wise wolf cub suddenly began to behave like this. Yi Shiwen was also shocked by this and did not know what to do. The way the wolf cub was crying right now, it seemed as if he was grieving the death of his father. The supreme figure walked forward step by step, and as soon as he began to walk, a golden lotus emerged from the ground. All eyes were immediately focused on that magnificent golden lotus, and they all saw that it was not condensed out of his power, but purely manifested out of some pure world law. In other words, the world itself honored his presence by giving him a tribute in the form of this grand and pure golden lotus. It made everyone have a chill feeling inside their hearts when they tried to analyze this by considering the extent of this supreme figure's power and the recognition he got from the world itself. It was as if they were like commoners in front of a noble existence. Yi Shiwen was instantly reminded of a legendary character from an ancient fable and how it was impossible for others to figure out the extent of his cultivation. Similarly, there was no way to try and speculate the cultivation level of this supreme figure, but it could be said that it was far, far beyond the legendary realm. The supreme figure walked step by step with his sharp and all-encompassing vision, observing everything around him. Whenever he took a step, the world trembled around him and trails of violent aura would ravage the space around him. That supreme figure's eyes looked like that of an eagle, filled with confidence and pride, not to mention he possessed an invincible majesty. To an extent that no one was daring to look him in the eye. How can someone be so strong? A young expert said with a dumbfounded expression on his face. This was the first time he experienced something like this and couldn't help but express his shock. Demon Emperor, you used to be strong, but that is a thing of the past. The shadow suddenly issued an owl-like raucous laughter. But, No matter how magnificent you were during your lifetime, death is always the final verdict and shows you the path to a home you can return to. The worst decision you made was to refuse to embrace death. You rejected our offer when you could also have become a master of death, but unfortunately, an influence that once deterred the 10,000 worlds has gone downhill to such a pathetic state. The shadow said in a mocking tone. Demon Emperor. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Even an ordinary person with basic general knowledge would know the weight contained in these two words. The very term emperor held a major significance irrespective of which race's name was put ahead of it. For example, human emperor, demon emperor, devil emperor, and so on. But using these terms casually without any truth or basis was an absolute taboo. Even most tyrannical experts of the world were afraid to call themselves so because it was no different than courting death by proclaiming oneself to be one. This was not a talk about one world but all of the 10,000 worlds, and a demon emperor was a being who was not just a local lord, he was the emperor of entire demon race that was spread throughout the 10,000 worlds community. You just could not claim to be an emperor and not face the consequences. And those who dared to call themselves emperors also had the ability to support their claim. Even in the ancient times, no one dared to claim of being an emperor so easily. Yishuan did not know much about the history of demon race or demon emperor, but it was quite understandable if one would say that this supreme figure had frightened the 10,000 worlds community in the ancient times when demon race used to be at its peak. Such a great being, even if he was not a human being, was worth giving respect. At this time, Yishuan remembered a myth from his previous life. The myth talked about the Jade Emperor who had ascended the throne of the heaven, but was it actually the legendary Demon Emperor who actually did it? Demon Emperor of the Heaven. This was just a myth, but Yishuan could still tell the undeniable similarities. This was enough to instantly accelerate his breathing out of surprise and excitement. Demon Emperor, Heaven's Peak Palace, and a lost civilization. These all things indicated startling similarities between the myth on the earth and the things he saw here in this world. What exactly happened in the ancient times? There were traces of Demon Emperor's existence in several legends and myths on the earth, but most of them were unofficially recorded ones. They did not give us solid proof about the existence of Demon Emperor of the Heaven. Jade Emperor was the one who dominated the heaven in the legend of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Yishuan could see a solid connection between the hidden history of this world and the myths on the earth, and in both cases, Demon Emperor had been kept a secret officially. He could faintly feel that perhaps he had come across something that was surprisingly being kept a universal secret. However, Yizaiwan's breathing accelerated not because of these legends, but because these things could clearly be linked with the legends on the earth. Could it be that the earth was related to the heaven of this world? Yishuan was most concerned about this point. Initially, when he had come to know that he crossed to this world from the earth, he was devastated because he had read so many novels on the same plotline and had never read about anyone returning home. However, today his palpitation accelerated suddenly when he speculated that these worlds were somehow linked. If the earth was also in a world that was part of the 10,000 worlds community, then he might be able to cross the worlds. He, then, would have an opportunity to go back home. Thinking of this, he simply was unable to restrain himself. One must know that although he had fully invested his time and heart in gaining the power to be able to protect his current family, he had always dreamed of returning to the earth. He considered it a distraction and would always suppress the thoughts about going back to the earth. If someone was to tell him now that everybody wants to cross to a different world because it's thrilling, then why did he want to return to the earth? Then, he would certainly slap them into oblivion. Only an idiot would willingly want to pass through to a different world, or perhaps people with special situations want that to happen. When considering Yizaiwan's case, he never involved himself in romance and women whom he thought was a waste of time and money. He was not an orphan and neither was he an outcast. He was neither struck by the lightning, nor was he hit by a truck. He used to be the most average kind of person with most average lifestyle in his past life and never cherished the idea of going to a different world. He was separated from his family and loved ones just like that. Family was always the most important for him, and even in this world, he treasured his family more than anything, especially because he lost it one time and did not want to go through the same pain again. No wonder his enemies had to face the wrath of the emperor whenever they threatened his family's security. Now it seemed like it was possible to go back to the earth, so how could he not be excited about it? Although this news might very well be useless in the current scenario, as crossing worlds was an inaccessible concept for Yi Shiwen, and even after finding out that it was possible, he might not be able to find a way to do that, but even so, he was still optimistic about it. Yi Ziwen felt that this shadow's words very shocking, to be honest. The decline of ancient heaven on the earth should have in the records, but there were none. As if something happened at all, and this led to the formation of a flawed history. According to what the shadow said, there seemed to be some kind of relationship between the decline of the ancient heaven in two different worlds. As if it was the result of the direct decline of the ancient heaven that was unique to all worlds, including the earth. Ancient heaven had innumerable powerhouses, and their only commander was the demon emperor. All of the 10,000 world community was scared of demon emperor, whose eternal glory had spread across the worlds. Such an almighty and tyrannical influence that continued to exist for millions of years actually declined when challenged by the unknown influence to which this shadow belonged to? This deduction was extremely shocking. Emperor Chen and the others were also in shock after they heard the ancient secret that actually blew up their minds. Although they did not know about the famous myth on the earth, this was still more than enough to leave them in utter shock. Chapter 266, Departure from the Island. The worst decision you made was to refuse to embrace death. You rejected our offer when you could also have become a master of death, but unfortunately, an influence that once deterred the 10,000 worlds has gone downhill to such a pathetic state. The shadow said in a mocking tone. I never thought that you would be hiding in the dark like a rat and still haven't withered away. Demon Emperor said proudly in a gallant manner. Ha 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 ha, Demon Emperor, you are ignorant and still haven't understood that if there is light in this world, there has to be darkness as well to maintain the balance. And remember that no matter how long you manage to survive, only death is eternal in the world. The shadow laughed in a weird way as if mocking the Demon Emperor. There are some things that even you never understood after all this time. Demon Emperor said in a somewhat indifferent tone, you have overreached yourself by daring to come here in your true body. I hope you are prepared to pay the price for your foolishness. Clang! 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 There were several light flashes around his body with clanging sounds of 10,000 swords everywhere, along with the formation of a gigantic sword key and beams of light shooting everywhere in the sky. This sword intention attack was much more tyrannical than the sword intention attack that Yi Shiwen learned from a sword emperor, long time ago. The Demon Emperor's sword intention was pure and extremely frightening when considering the fact that it contained the power of world laws as well. In an instant, an endless amount of sword ki coagulated to form a huge and thick curtain of swords in the sky. Everyone saw this scene and could not help but swallow their saliva. They could not make a guess about Demon Emperor's cultivation level, but judging from his awe-inspiring sword ki, it was not difficult for them to speculate that he was several realms above them. It seemed like the Demon Emperor used several world laws in conjunction for this one attack. Everyone was panic-stricken and was scared of the aftermath of this attack. They knew that even one touch of this sword ki could instantly kill them. They did not dare to stay outside and rushed into the palace. Everyone hastily entered the palace, and at this time, a loud noise resounded everywhere. An incomparably terrifying beam of light shot up into the sky and exploded, thereby instantly annihilating the palace's roof. Two figures leaped up into the sky, one was the Demon Emperor and other was that shadow. Demon Emperor was floating at a very high altitude, but his figure looked fuzzy and dimmer as if his whole body was enveloped in a fog. Space around him was distorted and no could see his face as a result of that. Yi Shiwen felt as if he was looking at a sword god, a being who was capable of cutting the sky and chopping the earth into pieces. In fact, a sword god was said to be capable of chopping destiny as well. Numerous Tao-based world laws were twinkling around his body and driving an almost endless amount of sword ki in the air, all prepared to kill anyone who would dare to come close to it. The large amount of sword ki fragmented into numerous swords, and each and every one of the swords pierced through space, causing countless holes in the space which then automatically repaired on its own. This was a spectacular yet frightening scene. At this time, the shadow's enormous and tyrannical imposing aura erupted from his body and instantly spread a barrage of deadki into the air. The spread-out deadki then suddenly instantly condensed to form a spear and collided with the Demon Emperor's swordki in the sky. Yi Shiwen, now is your chance, hurry up and uncover the seal. At this time, Yi Mo's voice sounded in Yi Ziwen's mind. Yi Shiwen did not ask him why he was hiding in front of the Demon Emperor because the answer was quite obvious. Boom! 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 The collision between deadki and swordki produced a horrible sight where a large section of space suddenly collapsed, just like the end of the world scenario. But right then, the Demon Emperor stretched his hand out and directly grabbed a world law out of the broken space. Afterward, he condensed that world law into a sword and struck with it, releasing a massive sword light, along with rippling world law, towards that shadow. Rumble. The entire space in the path of that sword light was cut off and a large part of it collapsed like a shattered mirror, while at the same time, the sword light continued to travel towards the shadow. The shadow also congealed a spear out of deadki in his hands and shot a beam of black light. Boom! The impact of this terrible collision seemed to be causing the annihilation of the world as if the entire world would collapse any moment now. At this time, Yi Shiwen felt a terrifying surge of energy waves coming towards him. He immediately used Tianyuan mirror to block those energy waves and rushed all the way inside the palace hall. He finally saw the ancient bell that was constantly ringing and releasing dreadful sound wave ripples. He also saw the seal that had completely sealed the bell's power. Yi Shiwen, do it now! Yi Mo suddenly shouted. Yi Shiwen did not hesitate to reach out and directly grab that seal, but he never thought that he would be able to tear off the seal so easily without putting much effort. Yi Shiwen snorted as he looked at the torn-off seal in his hands. He never imagined seeing such a pathetic seal that was able to restrain such a powerful ancient artifact, not to mention he managed to tear it off as if it was nothing more than a piece of paper. Shwa! The ancient clock bell turned into a streamer of light and flew towards the Demon Emperor. At this time, that arrogant shadow's barely noticeable face finally revealed a horrified expression. Ding dong! The bell's vigorous ringing sound echoed throughout the ominous mountain and the sound waves overflowed everywhere. The shadow turned into a black streamer of light to escape, but the sound waves were quicker than him and instantly hit him from behind, annihilating him into dust in a flash. It seemed as if a formidable enemy like him simply did not stand a chance in front of the bell's power. The sound waves spread throughout the ominous mountain and the entire undead army of zombies and skeletons instantly collapsed. The power of this bell was simply unimaginable. The seemingly endless undead army was instantly defeated and countless corpses fell down on the ground. The Demon Emperor glanced at the demon beast cubs once, then heaved a sigh but did not say anything. He just flew into the sky and slowly vanished into the horizon. The demon beast cubs were still crying as they saw the Demon Emperor disappear. Emperor Chen and the others looked at each other in dismay as they had never seen demon beasts crying like this. The dark ominous clouds in the sky suddenly broke after the heavy downpour that miraculously wiped out deadki and inchi from the atmosphere, and the rain water, which seemed to contain some kind of miraculous power, cleaned each and every bit of evil energy from the island. All kinds of vegetation began to grow up on the island and a bleak island suddenly evolved into a fairyland in a matter of few breaths. Everyone knew that this might be the last thing that was left behind by the Demon Emperor in this world, but they were also deeply impressed by his power and skills, which were simply out of reach of the mortals. Demon Island battle finally came to a close with a loss of several human geniuses and thousands of demon beast soldiers. Out of more than 1,000 disciples summoned to this island, only 400 managed to survive till the end. This figure also included about 100 weak disciples who actually did not participate in the final battle. Now, the survivors clearly understood why this island was called Genius Meat Grinder. Although 1 year's time had not yet passed, the Demon Island quest came to an end ahead of time. Everyone was speculating that this might be the last summoning of geniuses to this island. After this term, the Demon Island Bell would no longer summon peerless geniuses from the 10 countries of Southeast region. After the undead rebellion was put down for good, the very next day, a crowd of human experts gathered at the coast. They were waiting for the ship that would take them from the Demon Island to the coast of East China Sea. Since the airspace of the Demon Island was isolated from rest of the world, the safest option was to take the sea route. Both happiness and a sense of accomplishment could be seen on everyone's faces. They were somewhat tired after having finished the Demon Island quest. Of course, many experts were reluctant to leave. After all, staying on this island was very beneficial for their cultivation and experience. You are always welcome to be a guest of Wu royal clan. Wu Shaochuan smiled and said to Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling. He was quite sad of separating from his two good friends, but being martial artists who were dedicated to the way of martial arts, they were accustomed to such scenes. Mu Ling nodded with a smile. At this time, there was a sudden commotion and an ethereal voice sounded from afar and gradually approached the group of experts. Yi Shiwen saw a delicate figure with white skin, curved black eyebrows, and dazzling eyes, approaching him at an incredibly fast speed. It was as if he was looking at a fairy maiden with a peerless angelic appearance. Yi Shiwen was surprised when he realized that this figure was none other than Hua Menghan. She was clad in a snow-white robe and her whole body was covered in a white aura. Also, a pair of white wings could be seen protruding out of her back. Not just Yi Shiwen, everyone looked surprised when they saw Hua Menghan because they had never seen her on the island in the past several months. It was as if she never set foot on the island or was possibly hiding somewhere. Hua Menghan gently descended next to Yi Shiwen and her beautiful eyes smiled at him. "Are you okay?" Yi Shiwen asked in a somewhat astonished tone. "Where were you all this time? I searched for you everywhere but couldn't find you." "It's a long story," Hua Menghan said. Yi Shiwen sensed that she had obtained a peerless treasure and couldn't tell about it in front of everyone. Everyone around was casting envious glances at her. Judging from her speed and a pair of white wings on her back, they knew that she must have obtained some sort of treasure or heritage, and this out-of-the-world agility technique was an undeniable proof of that. Yi Shiwen noticed that she initially used to be at the first stage of Truth Realm at the time of Demon Island Bell summons, but now she was already at Truth 9th stage. It was obvious that she obtained some kind of inconceivable heritage during last several months. Where did Qin Ruochen go? Yi Shiwen had some doubts in his heart, but he chose not to ask right now. At this time, he saw someone approaching at a much faster speed than Hua Menghan. It was none other than the elderly tomb slave. He showed a faint smile to Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling, then waved his hand and two divine lights directly submerged the minds of Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling. Yi Shiwen immediately understood that the tomb slave fulfilled the promise to him and Mu Ling, but it seemed like others did not obtain tomb slave's heritage. Perhaps, this promise was not for everyone. After the tomb slave handed over his heritage to Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling, he did not say anything and turned around to leave. Yi Shiwen was not in a mood to find out whether other experts got this heritage or not. And that was because a large ship was slowly approaching the island. Dash. Chapter 267, Chu Jingkai promoted to Legendary Realm. Yi Yuan School was not far away from the East China Sea coastline. Both Hua Menghan and Yi Shiwen displayed incredibly fast speed to reach Yi Yuan School in much less time in comparison to the time it took them to reach the Demon Island. This time, they hardly spent half the time to travel from the East China Sea to Yi Yuan School. Back then, Hua Menghan was on the verge of entering the second stage of Truth Realm, and now she was at Truth 9th stage, which clearly showed the extraordinary heritage she obtained on the Demon Island. And Yi Shiwen was able to raise his cultivation level from Truth 4th stage to Truth 7th stage, though his battle efficiency was now comparable to Truth 9th peak. In other words, both of them reaped immense benefits on the Demon Island and would naturally display much faster speed than before. Hua Menghan was accompanied by a small white fox that was riding a beautiful rainbow and was occasionally producing faint roars. The wolf cub was on the side of Yi Shiwen and now seemed in a better mood than earlier. Initially, Yi Shiwen wanted to know the secret of the Demon Island, but after witnessing the battle on that ominous mountain and unexpected appearance of the Demon Emperor, Yi Shiwen decided to stop pursuing this secret. He did not want to get involved in some kind of terrible secret. As they say, ignorance is bliss. Such being the case, there was no reason for Yi Xuan to continue to keep the wolf cub under arrest. So he told the wolf cub that he was free now and could go wherever he wanted to. However, in contrary to Yi Zaiwen's expectation, the wolf cub chose to stay with him and said that he did not want to stay on the demon island, otherwise, he would be suffocated to death. All of them were extremely fast and soon arrived at the entrance of Yi Yuan School. They were about to enter when more than a dozen disciples suddenly arrived in front of them. These were the patrolling disciples of Yi Yuan School. All of them were core disciples, with each having cultivation of Xiantian's 6th stage and above. They were riding tall cranes to fly this high in the sky. Since the invasion of Bai Majiao, core disciples would always come out on patrolling duty. Stop! At this time, one of the core disciples said in a loud voice and blocked the path of Yi Xuan and Hua Menghan. What do you want? Yi Xuan put on a serious face and asked in a strict voice. True disciples enjoyed a special status in Yi Yuan School, no less than the elders, let alone Yi Xuan was the 5th pro-disciple. Then how did these core disciples dare to stop him? Even if these core disciples did not recognize them, they should have at least figured out that both Yi Xuan and Hua Menghan were true disciples of Yi Yuan School, since they were flying in the sky and were wearing the sex badge as well. Then why did they dare to block their path like this? Hua Menghan did not say anything, but Yi Xuan stepped forward to deal with them. Yi Xuan, are they the disciples of your Yi Yuan School? They are pathetic losers. Newborn pups on my island are better than these good-for-nothing weaklings. The wolf cub said and seemed prepared to attack those disciples, but Yi Xuan flicked his forehead with a finger to stop him. Do you know the consequences of stopping a true disciple? Yi Xuan asked coldly. So, it is Brother Yi and Sister Hua. At this time, the leader of the core disciples recognized them but still did not get out of their way, but I must inform you too that security rules have changed because Bai Mojiao's rebellion is getting bigger and bigger. Brother Chu has ordered a thorough inspection of anybody who comes from outside in order to guard against spies. So, you are basically trying to say that I might bring in spies with me so you will perform an inspection? Yi Zaiwen's complexion turned dark and a fierce look appeared in his eyes. So basically, under this rule, even true disciples were not eligible to pass through the entrance without having an inspection done on them. But this rule shouldn't apply on pro-disciples, since Chu Jingkai himself was a pro-disciple and did not hold enough authority to put checks on the other pro-disciples. However, it was still unprecedented and totally bizarre that a bunch of core disciples dared to question two true disciples, not to mention Yi Xuan was also a pro-disciple. Chu Jingkai indeed held great authority in the sect, but this was totally unacceptable. Could it be that his plan was to offend true disciples? We are not trying to say that, but Brother Chu has set a rule and we must abide by that. The leading disciple said. Get lost. Yi Xuan was disinclined to speak nonsense with them. Performing inspection on him was no different than putting him in the category of a probable traitor. Would it not thoroughly degrade his dignity and prestige as a pro-disciple? And that too when he was going to be inspected by a bunch of core disciples. It was not just about being suspected or inspected by juniors, it was also about submitting to Chu Jingkai's authority, and Yi Xuan wasn't the type of guy who would simply ignore that. Brother Yi, Sister Hua, I'm afraid you do not know that 3 months ago, Brother Chu has stepped into the legendary realm and is now going to become the head of next generation, though it has not been announced yet. Gone are the days of 5 pro-disciples. The disciple said in an arrogant tone. Brother Yi, it would be best for you to obediently get yourself inspected, otherwise if Brother Chu got to know about this, things would get pretty ugly for you. The disciple openly mocked Yi Xuan, and it seemed like he belonged to the faction of Chu Jingkai, and that was why he was being so rampant in front of Yi Xuan. Even if Chu Jingkai has entered the legendary realm, that doesn't mean you can disrespect me, your superior. Yi Xuan shouted, remember that your brother Chu won't come to save you from my wrath. You have dared to disrespect your superior, and according to the rules of Yi Yuan School, you shall be punished. Yi Xuan slapped that disciple right in the face and sent him flying far away. His figure disappeared into the horizon and it was hard to predict how far he would go, flying like this, before falling down on the ground. Yi Shiwen was very calm at this moment and seemed to be indulged in deep thinking. Chu Jingkai stepped into the legendary realm, so the status of other pro-disciples was no longer valid in Yi Yuan school. Yi Shiwen, how dare you treat us this way? How do you plan to explain yourself in front of Brother Chu? A disciple got angry and shouted loudly. Of course, he was scared and did not expect to see Yi Shiwen reacting in such a manner. Other true disciples had already submitted to Chu Jingkai because it was now clear that he was going to become the next head of Yi Yuan school. No one wanted to be on his bad side, and the other pro-disciples also lost their special status, thereby returning to their previous identity of true disciples. Humph, I don't need to give him an explanation, and I don't give a damn about what he thinks about me. Yi Shiwen said coldly, as he was not at all scared of Chu Jingkai. Yi Shiwen, behave yourself, do you want to be convicted as a traitor? A familiar voice sounded from afar and Elder Jin Xian arrived at the scene. So, it's you. Yi Shiwen looked coldly at Elder Jin Xian without showing any trace of respect whatsoever. If Chu Jingkai had placed such a rule, was it also applicable on the elders? True disciples enjoyed lots of privileges in Yi Yuan school and held much more authority than the elders. This was the reason why Luo Yifan used to be so rampant by relying on his identity as a true disciple. True disciples were superior to core disciples in status, strength, and influence. They also held enough authority to punish core disciples if deemed punishable. Not to forget, Yi Shiwen was a pro-disciple and certainly wasn't going to just stand and watch while his juniors tried to disrespect him. But, Yi Shiwen soon understood that it was actually Jin Xian who was behind all this. Jin Xian must have instigated these core disciples to provoke Yi Shiwen and chose the right time to make an appearance and blame him. Yi Shiwen noticed that Jin Xian's cultivation was now at Truth 8th stage. Of course, Jin Xian must have been desperate and forcibly had a breakthrough at such an old age, otherwise, later it would be impossible to have a breakthrough. So, he got an opportunity to have a forced breakthrough and he made full use of it. Yi Shiwen did not know how he did it, but it was certainly related to Chu Jingkai. Yi Shiwen, are you trying to commit treason right after coming back to the sect? Jin Xian looked viciously at Yi Shiwen and a look of anger flashed in his eyes. Yi Shiwen had made him lose face in front of everyone. He had been thrown into the mine, never to come back to the sect again in this lifetime, all because of this one arrogant brat named Yi Shiwen. He never thought that one day he would get an opportunity to return to Yi Yuan school and once again stand in front of Yi Shiwen. Treason, you say? These people have dared to disrespect their superiors. They are lucky that I haven't killed them already. Yi Shiwen said in a calm yet scary voice. Nonsense, they are acting in accordance with the orders from above. But I can see that you are acting suspiciously and you also are the biggest suspect of being a spy, Jin Xian said and grinned. An ignorant elder like you wants to convict me. I think you do not wish to live anymore. Yi Shiwen said and smirked in response. I see, in that case, first I will capture you then deliver you to the elder parliament. Jin Xian sneered and suddenly rushed forward. The great power of Truth 8th stage instantly manifested itself within his body. He arrived in front of Yi Shiwen like an incredibly fast storm, but since he had once been defeated before, he knew that Yi Shiwen was ridiculously strong. Hence, Jin Xian would naturally not dare to underestimate him. Damn you bastard! Yi Shiwen was furious with an intense killing intention boiling within his heart. His whole body instantly released a burst of Jin Yuan in the surroundings. A disciple wants to attack an elder? This is going to invoke capital punishment upon you. Jin Xian said in a stern voice, and all of a sudden, waves of Jin Yuan surged out of his body and began to revolve around him. Yi Zaiwen's Jin Yuan transformed into a coiling dragon which roared loudly and crashed into the revolving protection screen of Jin Xian. Yi Shiwen did not even need to act personally because Jin Xian's revolving protection screen was immediately routed by the coiling dragon. At this time, Jin Xian shot his most powerful attack in the form of surging Jin Yuan that blotted the sky and then suddenly converged towards Yi Shiwen just like squally shower. Chapter 268, Fame Rises in the Southeast Region. Jin Xian was confident because he was at Truth 8th stage and felt superior to Yi Xuan in not just level but strength as well. After all, Yi Zaiwan is to be nothing but a disciple of Truth 4th stage when he left for the Demon Island quest, almost half a year ago. It seems like I am going to have to teach you a lesson. Yi Xuan sneered and stuck his hand out. It instantly transformed into a dragon claw and gave rise to Dragon Whirlwind. Boom! In a flash, Jin Xian's attack was rendered useless by the Dragon Whirlwind and it further proceeded to fiercely collide with his body, as a result of which, he was sent flying high into the sky like a catapulted object. How is this possible? An expression of utter disbelief appeared on Jin Xian's face the moment his confidence was brutally shattered by Yi Xuan. Jin Xian was betting on his own enhanced strength and thought that he could deal with Yi Xuan, not to mention he also had the backing of Chu Jingkai, but he never expected to face such a loss of face at the hands of Yi Xuan. He never imagined that Yi Xuan would become so terrifyingly powerful after having spent half a year on the Demon Island. He was at Truth 8th stage and there was no doubt about it, but he still wasn't able to block a single attack. In fact, on the contrary, he was sent flying like a weakling. He felt depressed because exactly same thing happened to him the last time he fought with Yi Xuan, more than a year ago. However, unlike last time, this time, no one came to his rescue. Yi Xuan instantly arrived in front of Jin Xian, who was injured and lying on the ground, then inserted his palm into Jin Xian's dantian and crushed it. No, please, you cannot. Yi Xuan was so fast that he did not even get enough time to shout for help. Bang! In a blink of an eye, Jin Xian lost his cultivation and hence was crippled by Yi Xuan. He spurted a mouthful of blood and lost consciousness due to intense pain and blood loss. Yi Xuan coldly looked at Jin Xian and began to think, was it really Chu Jingkai's plan to bring Jin Xian back from the mines? In that case, Jin Xian must have also received some kind of mighty medicine that helped him in having a breakthrough. Yi Xuan sneered and remembered that the misgivings between him and Chu Jingkai had started with the beginning of his enmity with Luo Yifan and Luo clan because Luo clan was a supporter of Chu Jingkai. However, later on, Yi Xuan became the 5th pro-disciple and thus became a direct competitor of Chu Jingkai. In fact, all pro-disciples were direct competitors of each other. Not to mention, the position of sect head had always been taken by pro-disciples. And there had never been an exception to this pattern. However, no matter what might be the outcome of this, he had returned and Chu Jingkai and the other pro-disciples would have to accept his domineering presence. The news about their return set off an uproar throughout Yi Yuan School. This news was bound to attract everyone's attention. After all, only 3 disciples were summoned to the Demon Island this time and 2 of them came back safely. Since they had come earlier than the designated time of 1 year, everyone wanted to know what exactly happened there. And right after Yi Xuan and Hua Menghan came back, something unexpected happened. Hua Menghan was made the 6th pro-disciple and became a target of public attention alongside Yi Xuan. Everyone was surprised because she became a true disciple not long before setting out for the Demon Island, and right after coming back, she was made a pro-disciple. Something like this was simply unprecedented while only excluding Yi Zaiwan's case, as he had also created a similar sensation when he was made the 5th pro-disciple. However, Yi Xuan was famous for being an exception in everything, though same was not true for Hua Menghan, and that was why many were envious of her sudden, unexpected fame. Immediately, the whole Yi Yuan school was discussing the clash between Yi Xuan and Chu Jingkai. This was an important matter because Yi Xuan powered up in the last 6 months, whereas Chu Jingkai became the only pro-disciple to step into the legendary realm. Also, a rumor spread out that it was actually Chu Jingkai who brought back Jin Xian from the mines to take Yi Xuan down, but Jin Xian was crippled instead. Yi Yuan School was once again impressed by Yi Zaiwan's strength because he was able to defeat Jin Xian, who was at Truth 8th stage. According to witnesses, Yi Xuan was so formidable that Jin Xian wasn't able to stop even a single attack aimed at him. As time passed slowly, the matter about the Demon Island bit by bit spread not just in Yi Yuan School or Great Yu State but throughout the southeast region. Everyone came to know that the 8th prince was actually killed by Yi Xuan in a battle where he was battling against 2 experts of Truth 8th Peak. Since the eighth prince, who was also the commander of imperial guards, was considered the most talented genius in the younger generation of Great Yu State before the Demon Island quest started, after killing him, Yi Shiwen attained the same position by default. It could be said that Yi Shiwen was not just formidable and tough but also had extraordinary combat skills. Although Yi Yuan School lost a valuable peerless genius in the form of Chen Ruochen who was now missing, this trip to the Demon Island could be called successful in respect of Yi Yuan School and only by virtue of one man, Yi Shiwen. This one name Yi Shiwen was enough to grant an illustrious prestige to Yi Yuan School that had now become famous in all of the 10 countries of Southeast region as Yi Zaiwen's sect. Yi Yuan School was a major sect but was only famous in Great Yu State, but now that it was famous in the Southeast region, the credit would entirely go to Yi Shiwen. Yi Yuan School used to be considered as a mid-level sect by the foreign powers, even though a famous legendary expert like Qi Fifan belonged to it. However, Yi Zaiwen's recent outstanding performance and extraordinary achievements were enough to shock foreigners and greatly contributed towards Yi Yuan School's newfound fame in the foreign lands. Yi Shiwen not only defeated 2 experts of Truth 8th Peak at once, despite being 2 levels below them, he also slaughtered 2 half-step legendary zombies though under some special circumstances which might have made things easier for him, but still, it was only him who was able to achieve such feats. Hence, these achievements were enough to establish his strength and formidability in the eyes of everyone. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen's fame spread everywhere. Now, his name was well known in the southeast region and was being counted among other famous geniuses such as Emperor Chen, Qing Su, Warhawk, Ji Moon, and Wang Purple. People had come up with a list of top geniuses among the 10 counties of southeast region and Yi Shiwen's name was at the top of this list. Yi Shiwen suddenly became the pride of Yi Yuan School and now everyone was scared how Chu Jingkai was going to react. What if he tried to get rid of Yi Shiwen? After all, Yi Shiwen couldn't possibly fight with a legendary expert. In addition to Yi Shiwen, all sorts of vital information about Hua Menghan was slowly dug out because a lot of people had not understood why Hua Menghan suddenly became the 6th pro-disciple, but when news about her exploits in the Demon Island was dug out, everyone was impressed to find out that she had actually obtained the heritage of a great person on the Demon Island. This was the reason how in just half a year, she was able to jump from Truth 2nd stage to Truth 9th stage. One must know, obtaining a rare kind of heritage was no trivial matter because this also indicated that her future prospects were going to be limitless. Like the 8th prince had immediately become a contender for the throne in the royal clan after obtaining the heritage of 4 sacred beasts sect, not to mention he had also become the most popular candidate as well. In Zhenwujia, it was always a matter of great importance whenever a disciple was to obtain the inheritance of ancient sects or lost civilizations because it often meant that these lucky disciples would then obtain great wisdom, lost martial art techniques and also the blessings of ancient beings. And news about Hua Menghan obtaining great benefits on the Demon Island slowly spread throughout the 10 countries of Southeast region. The Demon Island, anyway, was famous as a mysterious island that was home to legendary beasts, but this time, the surviving disciples spread all sorts of newly obtained information about the island, for example, about the existence of a tyrannical ancient demon race and the demon emperor. And, if Hua Menghan had really obtained the heritage from a great being, belonging to such a lost civilization, then one could easily imagine her importance. Therefore, it was not surprising that she was made the 6th pro-disciple of Yi Yuan School, thereby adding a bit more uncertainty to the contest for head's position. Chu Jingkai was the first pro-disciple and had maintained his power and illustrious prestige for last 100 years, so no one dared to go against him, but on several occasions, he was openly challenged by Yi Shiwen. Of course, Yi Shiwen was not a fool and it was a near impossible task to make him submit. Luo Yifan once tried to bully Yi Shiwen, and now, no one knew where his corpse was rotting. No one dared to openly mention it but a lot of people suspected that Yi Shiwen was secretly involved in the killing of Luo Yifan. 1 month passed after Yi Shiwen returned to Qianyu Peak but Chu Jingkai did not pull off anything to retaliate and take revenge. In this sensitive period of time, one day, Qi Fifan personally went to Qianyu Peak to meet Yi Shiwen. Qianyu faction is honored that Brother Qi has taken out some time from his busy schedule to visit us. Yi Shiwen said with a smile and welcomed Qi Fifan. Although both of them were pro-disciples, there was no need for Yi Shiwen to call him Brother Qi, but Yi Shiwen had always referred to him like that and continued to do so even after becoming a pro-disciple. After all, Qi Fifan had saved him several times. Brother Yi, I hope you will pardon me for being presumptuous enough to come here without informing. Qi Fifan also smiled and said, I would not beat around the bush and come straight to the point. Today, I have come precisely to settle things between you and Chu Jingkai. There's nothing going on between us. Yi Shiwen said indifferently. I know that his newly implemented inspection rule ended up causing trouble for you, and I must say that he is not at right in this regard. However, that Jin Xian incident was not arranged by him. Qi Fifan said, I feel the need to disclose something important that all pro-disciples must know. Dash. Chapter 269, True Martial University. I know that his newly implemented inspection rule ended up causing trouble for you, and I must say that he is not at right in this regard. However, that Jin Xian incident was not arranged by him. Qi Fifan said, I feel the need to disclose something important that all pro-disciples must know. Oh. Please tell me, I am all ears. Yi Shiwen humbly replied. He recently became a pro-disciple and was mostly busy cultivating, hence was unable to learn a lot of things about pro-disciples. Actually, Yi Shiwen had already planned to teach Chu Jingkai a lesson if he continued to create troubles for him. Although Chu Jingkai suddenly became the most eligible candidate among all pro-disciples for the position of sect head after stepping into Legendary Realm, Yi Zaiwen's achievements also couldn't be ignored. In a short time of half a year, he powered up to the extent that he was able to single-handedly kill 2 half-step legendary zombies. His potential was not hidden from anyone. Yi Shiwen was not at all intimidated by Chu Jingkai and was confident to surpass him sooner or later. However, after listening to what Qi Fifan said, it seemed like there was some kind of misunderstanding. In fact, there is a competition among pro-disciples, but the sense of cooperation is more than cooperation. When there was a struggle going on between you and Luo Yifan, Chu Jingkai was aware of that but chose not to interfere. You know why? Qi Fifan said. Why? Yi Shiwen asked and recalled this was indeed the case. Chu Jingkai never tried to interfere even when a deadly battle took place between him and Luo Yifan. Perhaps, Chu Jingkai might have lent a hand to Luo Yifan behind the scenes but never did so openly. Even so, it was very unusual since Chu Jingkai could have easily interfered as a pro-disciple to save his vassal, Luo Yifan. He had all the valid reasons to attack Yi Shiwen, but why didn't he do so? Especially after Yi Shiwen became a pro-disciple, there was literally a cold war going on between him and Chu Jingkai, but even then, Chu Jingkai never really used extreme methods against him. The truth is that bystanders think that we pro-disciples are desperately and madly competing with each other for the position of sect head. Qi Fifan said. Is that a wrong perception? Yi Shiwen asked in a somewhat strange manner, especially because he had witnessed the fierce struggle between Chu Jingkai and Yellow Dust. Not just that, he had also seen a fierce battle between the disciples of 2 pro-factions. In fact, there isn't a life and death type-off competition among us, to be honest. Qi Fifan said, and in reality, this kind of life and death struggle is among the elders and disciples for their respective favorite pro-disciple. We pro-disciples have never actually fought life and death battles, neither do we intend to. Since their interests are dependent on us, therefore they are always more anxious than us and pull things out of context to the point of exaggeration just to satisfy their own personal agendas. Qi Fifan explained. Yi Shiwen understood what Qi Fifan was trying to say. Indeed, sometimes other people are more anxious than you and act on your behalf without permission, making things difficult for all. In fact, I am going to tell you the truth. I have never wanted to compete for the position of sect head. Qi Fifan said this and a look of disbelief appeared on Yi Zaiwen's face all of a sudden. Qi Fifan noticed it, smiled and said, for many people, obtaining the position of leader is their lifelong goal and they continue to compete throughout their life, but for me, it has never been a goal. So long as I want, I can easily obtain it. According to me, there are a lot of things that you can do outside the small boundary of Yi Yuan School. The world is too big and there's so much to explore. Qi Fifan said, Brother Yi, have you heard of True Martial University? Yi Xuan shook his head as he had never heard of True Martial University. Well, it cannot be helped. It seems like Brother Yi has devoted most of his time to cultivation and managed to enhance his cultivation in such a short time. So, lack of general knowledge is understandable. Qi Fifan made a sharp point and Yi Xuan immediately understood that his statement was aimed at pointing out the rapid and sharp rise in his cultivation while trying to link it to a lack of general knowledge he showed just now. In the southern region of Zhenwu-Jia continent, there is a famous institution named True Martial University where everyone can go and study. A lot of extremely talented geniuses from several generations converge together to study in True Martial University, in search of brighter future prospects. Qi Fifan said. I never knew about such a place. Yi Xuan really did not know, although he had read a lot of books on various topics when he used to be in Hotian realm, but as his cultivation level advanced further, he began to focus more on martial arts practice and ancient legends to get hints about furthering his practice. Yi Xuan suddenly felt that he did not know a lot of things. In other words, his knowledge on current affairs was weak and he needed to visit Yi Yuan School's main library to enrich his knowledge. Otherwise, lack of general knowledge might cause major embarrassment for him. Of course, now reading books would be easier for him as he could just use his soul search skill on books for quick sorting of information and deeper understanding. Without the soul search skill, it would actually be an insane task to go through so many books, stored in the main library. Well, I really do not know when True Martial University came into existence, perhaps during the Devil War, or perhaps even earlier, no one knows when, but it has been there since time immemorial, for all curious and ambitious experts to keep their aspirations incited. Qi Fifan said, countless talents from southern region aspire to enter this university, and not just that, countless genius evildoers from other foreign territories also come to join True Martial University. It is hard to tell how many great people have studied in this university, and the list is very long. That is my battlefield. Qi Fifan stood up and said with a hint of yearning expression on his face, and not just me, Chu Jingkai, Yellow Dust and the other prodisciples also yearn to enter True Martial University. All of us want to test ourselves by measuring our potential with respect to those countless evildoers. Qi Fifan said with confidence. Even if he was talking about countless geniuses from foreign lands, his flawless confidence didn't budge at all. Qi Fifan was counted among the top experts in the current generation of experts from Southeast region. But, even if he managed to enter True Martial University, there was a chance that he would just be among the ordinary lot of disciples. After all, this was the real competition among true geniuses. The competition among prodisciples was nothing in front of it. You may know that we prodisciples have stayed at half-step legendary realm for a long time, but do you know that we actually chose to do so? Qi Fifan asked. Yi Xuan shook his head, but this question was already present in his heart as to why even a famous expert like Qi Fifan, who should be able to easily step into legendary realm, was stuck at half-step legendary realm. He was always puzzled by this, and it seemed like there really was a valid reason behind this. Yi Xuan knew that these prodisciples had been stuck at half-step legendary realm for decades. In fact, Qi Fifan reached it about 40 years ago. Was it really possible that these so-called super-talented prodisciples were incapable of stepping into the legendary realm? Of course, not. Yi Xuan never believed in the explanation that it was actually very touched to go from half-step legendary to legendary level and usually took decades to do so. This statement might be true for ordinary experts but definitely not for prodisciples. In order to let experts join True Martial University, it opens once in 100 years. For ordinary people, the period of 100 years was equivalent to a lifetime, but for successful martial artists, it was simply nothing. Not to mention, True Martial University gave enough time to the experts to practice and level up for next entrance test, and to be honest, the time period of 100 years was still not sufficient for most experts to prepare for the entrance test. 100 years ago, Chu Jingkai and other prodisciples of that time had already experienced the opening of True Martial University for new applicants, but they did not go. After all, not everyone was an exceptional case like Yi Xuan, who was barely 20 years old right now. In fact, They were far from being qualified. However, in accordance with the current level and potential of both Yi Shiwen and Hua Menghan, they should be more than qualified to participate in True Martial University recruitment campaign in the coming 100 years. True Martial University has disciples divided into several ranks such as janitor disciples, common disciples, outer disciples, inner disciples, core disciples, true disciples, pro-disciples, and so on. That is very similar to our system of rank division. Yi Shiwen said. Actually, it's the other way round. In reality, Yi Yuan School and the other major sects of not just Great Yu State but entire Southeast region have copied the education system and administration system of True Martial University. Qi Fifan explained. True Martial University is the most powerful presence in the entire southern region. Just imagine, if a true disciple from our sect applies to enter this university, he can at most become a janitor disciple. Similarly, a disciple who is at half-step legendary will become a common disciple and a legendary disciple will become an outer disciple. The threshold to become an inner disciple is even higher. Janitor disciple Yi Shiwen was stunned by Qi Fifan's explanation. So basically, even legendary experts were not considered worthy enough to become anything more than the outer disciples in True Martial University. Also, true disciples were treated as janitor disciples over there. The monstrous strength and influence of True Martial University could be imagined simply from the fact that its outer disciples were enough to wreak havoc in the southeast region. It was really hard to imagine the level of core disciples, true disciples, and pro-disciples of True Martial University. Yi Shiwen was shocked to learn that Qi Fifan and the other pro-disciples were not even eligible to become outer disciples in True Martial University. Of course, this is not absolute because in addition to strength and cultivation level, True Martial University pays more attention to talent and future potential. Qi Fifan said, their assessment is divided into truth, half-legend, legend, and also the sage realm. Only the most outstanding experts can earn fame there. If you talk about us pro-disciples, our cultivation levels are still too low, and if we stepped into legendary realm, like Chu Jinkai, our performances will be too mediocre in comparison to our competitors. Perhaps, we may even be demoted to the rank of janitor disciples from common disciples. Chapter 270. Book Demon. Our practice time is too short, so if we step into the legendary realm now then we are basically going to end up being at the bottom in True Martial University. Qi Fifan said. Yi Shiwen nodded. Even having great talent was not enough to reach higher levels of the legendary realm so easily. Therefore, it is better to stay at half-step legendary realm, and if we are able to give an outstanding performance during the entrance assessment test, perhaps they may consider giving us the status of inner disciples or even core disciples. Qi Fifan said. Now, Yi Shiwen finally understood the reason why these pro-disciples weren't keen on stepping into the legendary realm. So, they had been planning for decades, just for this one opportunity. Brother Yi, deducing from your age and cultivation level, if you wait for 100 years and then appear in the entrance assessment test of True Martial University, in that case, none of the opponents of half-step legendary level will stand a chance against you. Qi Fifan tried to give a critical opinion because going by the cultivation speed shown by Yi Shiwen, he should be able to definitely surpass legendary realm in the coming 100 years. In fact, he should be able to easily reach higher levels of Sage Realm if his cultivation continued to grow at this speed. That being said, now that Chu Jinkai has stepped into the legendary realm, will he give up on entering True Martial University this time? Yi Shiwen asked, but he obviously did not think that Chu Jinkai should give up, especially after waiting 100 years for this opportunity. However, postponing was also an option for him now, since a legendary expert's lifespan was 1,000 years and waiting for yet another 100 years was not a big deal because Chu Jinkai's life as a legendary expert had only just begun. Yes, I wanted to be a moderator between you two to erase all misunderstandings. There is no need for an unnecessary blood feud between you two. I am going to True Martial University, along with second and third pro-disciples, so now, only you, Chu Jinkai and Hua Menghan will remain in Yi Yuan School as pro-disciples. I want all three of you to get along and protect Yi Yuan School. Qi Fifan said. Do not misunderstand Chu Jinkai's intentions. That guy has made quite a lot of sacrifices for our sect. I don't hold anything against him, to be honest. But his followers always try to provoke me and I cannot just stand idle and let them do whatever they want. Yi Shiwen said. Well, that is understandable since no one is allowed to embarrass or insult a pro-disciple, and those who dare to break this rule deserve to be punished. You should continue to punish those who provoke you. I don't think Chu Jingkai would say anything. Qi Fifan said. Qi Fifan was on Yi Zaiwen's side because he knew that Yi Shiwen wasn't the type of guy who would indiscriminately attack people for no reason. No one could play with the dignity of a pro-disciple, that was a strict law in Yi Yuan school and not even the elders could break it. Good, my job is done here. I will not stay for long, time to say goodbye. Qi Fifan said goodbye with a smile and left. After he left, Yi Mo appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. True Martial University, it seems like a place I will have to visit eventually. Yi Shiwen said. He knew that Qi Fifan's proposal of waiting for 100 years was quite critical in a way. In fact, if he really waited for so long before appearing in True Martial University's entrance assessment, he would actually have no opponents at all. However, according to Qi Fifan, Yi Shiwen must stay at Half-Step Legendary Realm for coming 100 years. The longer he would stay at Half-Step Legendary Realm, the greater would be the accumulation of energy and experience. However, he could not wait for so long because now he knew that there was hope of returning to the earth. Nothing could stop him now as he wanted to go back home as soon as possible. Of course, 100 years was not a long period of time for him, but that was not the case for the people on the earth. He could not wait that long because his family would be dead by then. So, he must quickly enhance his cultivation as soon as possible, enough to make it possible for him to go back to his parents before they die. However, Yi Yuan School could not help him in achieving his new goal because the strongest known experts in this school were at most at Legendary Realm and even they couldn't perform interdimensional travel. In other words, he must reach higher realms, much above Legendary Realm, to achieve his newfound goal. And it seemed like True Martial University was a place that might help him in this regard. After he made up his mind, he did not say anything to anyone and directly went to the main library of Yi Yuan School to find out more about True Martial University, and also to gain some basic general knowledge for the betterment of his understanding of this world. He had no time to accumulate experience and hence had to use such a method to forcefully mug up all sorts of information and dump them into his mind. At his current status, he could naturally access forbidden parts of the library with ease. The main library was located in a different world that was somewhat small but had enough space to contain piles of millions of books, arranged in various different categories. The guard of this small world was an old man with unfathomable cultivation. Yi Shiwen tried to sense his cultivation level but failed to do so. His guess was that this old man was possibly at a very profound stage of the legendary realm. An expert like him really deserved to be the guard of Yi Yuan School's main library. After all, this one library was home to books on numerous martial techniques, secret skills, etc. There were a lot of other secret stuff stored in this library and Yi Yuan School could not afford to lose them at any cost. Greetings to Senior. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said in a respectful manner. Good, are you a new true disciple? I haven't seen you before. The old man looked at Yi Shiwen and said. He looked quite surprised as the young man standing in front of him was clearly at Truth's 7th stage, but he had never seen him coming to the library before. This was quite strange because new true disciples would usually visit the main library, right after stepping into Truth Realm, to learn basics about Truth Realm and a variety of other information. However, it was extremely rare for an expert of Truth's 7th stage to visit the main library for the first time. This was because Yi Shiwen had successive breakthroughs, one after another after he stepped into the Truth Realm. Not to mention, he was never stuck at any point during his cultivation and never really found a need to visit the main library. However, now he had to admit that knowledge was a necessary tool to obtain greater power. Yi Shiwen nodded. The old man looked somewhat strangely at him then said, You can go inside but you may have trouble locating things inside, so I will send a book demon to show you the way. the old man conveniently summoned a book demon. It was a glowing white spirit, about 30 centimeters tall, with a somewhat timid appearance. You will find all sorts of books in the stock. Go inside and take a look. That old man indifferently said. Thank you, Senior, for the help. Yi Shuwen said and entered the library with that book demon. Brother, what kind of books are you looking for? The book demon said. These book demons would daily absorb spiritual essence from the books in order to live. Even a stone could turn into a demon, let alone books. And these books often possessed inherent advantages because they were written by great people who usually left behind a portion of their souls in the books they wrote. These souls and lingering sentiments would later emerge as book demons. Of course, the type of book demon was dependent on the book's content. And some formidable rebellious ones had taken refuge in Yi Yuan School, for example, the one who was showing the way to Yi Shuwen. Yi Shuwen said, I'm looking for information on True Martial University. I see, those data books have also been read by several seniors in the past. The book demon said and led Yi Shuwen in the right direction. These book demons were not weak beings and also did not have low status in the sect. Their status was comparable to core disciples and they were also able to cultivate. Once a book demon succeeded to cultivate to a considerably higher level, it could then become a disciple of Yi Yuan School. Yi Shuwen suspected that even that old guard was probably a book demon. Perhaps, he used to be a book demon earlier but later began to cultivate and eventually reached such a high level that he was given a very important post of guarding the main library. However, at this time, Yi Shuwen was not much interested in getting to the bottom of this matter. Bang! Suddenly, there came a loud noise along with distant human voices. Yi Shuwen turned his head in the direction of the source of the sound and saw a team of giant book demons as if going on an expedition. The book demon noticed the curious expression on Yi Zaiwen's face and said, This is being caused by a book on military and war strategies. Those book demons are born out of that book. Yi Shuwen couldn't help but feel amazed. This world was really full of wonders. They continued to walk past several bookshelves. There were countless huge books stacked on these shelves and contained a variety of information. It was not hard to tell that some of these books were thousands of years old. Hey, Yi Shuwen, I know a better way than using soul search to grasp knowledge faster and more efficiently. Yi Mo's voice suddenly resounded in Yi Zaiwen's mind, and at the same time, he appeared beside him. Yi Mo was clad in a Confucian-style scholar dress and the instant he appeared, the book demon was frightened and jumped back away in panic. Yi Mo glanced at that book demon's face with a rather unexcited look in his eyes. You just need to catch them all and swallow them up. This is the easiest way to naturally grasp knowledge. Chapter 271, Overnight Epiphany, You just catch them all and swallow them up. This is the easiest way to naturally grasp knowledge. Yi Mo chuckled. He simply did not care the method, he just wanted for Yi Shuwen to get stronger as fast as possible. Even if Yi Shuwen was to skim through so many books, it was similar to scanning documents with a scanner and storing unprocessed data in his mind. This did not mean that he understood everything he read, but if he consumed these book demons then he would immediately understand the essence of all the information because these book demons themselves were nothing but the very embodiment of book's essence. This suggestion seemed very attractive to Yi Shuwen, but the same wasn't true for the little book demon standing next to him. To the terrified book demon, these two strangers seemed like ominous people with cruel motives. This was a world of books and these book demons were basically the embodiment of school's martial art heritage. Yi Shuwen used soul search and instantly began to sweep through a book. Although for ordinary experts, there were going to be some disparities between merely reading a book and digesting the book's essence by digesting the book demon associated with that book, however, this wasn't an issue for Yi Shuwen. Of course, Yi Mo didn't know about Yi Zaiwen's secret and that was why he made the suggestion of digesting the book demons instead of reading the books. Yi Zaiwen's soul search began to sweep through books and simultaneously began to gather a variety of information within his mind. At the same time, the mysterious space began to deconstruct the large inflow of information into bits of knowledge and transferred them to his mind for permanent storage. Yishuan discovered that he did not need to consume a book demon to obtain its book's essence. With the help of soul search and mysterious space, he could quickly stock up knowledge, and that too in a considerably short amount of time. The stock of knowledge began to increase in his mind, and his cultivation level also began to increase, though very slowly. However, the influx of knowledge and information was constantly expanding his foundation. Yishuan was pleasantly surprised to find out that his inner state was consolidating bit by bit, while at the same, his understanding of this world was also improving bit by bit. This was also beginning to positively affect his cultivation, as he could clearly feel faint traces of improvement. Yishuan finally understood why the ancients said, reading a book is like taking a walk on a 10,000 miles long road. He had to accept that he lacked enough experience about this world, and if by reading these books and gaining their essence, he could gather up experience and knowledge, then there was nothing that could stop him. Most of these books were ages old and contained the gist of insights and knowledge gathered by ancient experts through thorough research and hard work, but right now, Yishuan was plundering their hard work so effortlessly. Yishuan could see that the authors of these books must have also read books from the authors that came way before in time. In that way, these books were a continuation of ancient knowledge, passed down by many authors from different eras through their books. While he was absorbing the essence of the books, he felt as if he was actually experiencing the whole thing in real life. He could sense various sentiments and emotions surging within his heart. The more he went inside this world of books and absorbed their essence, the more he sensed a gradual change in his own temperament. He also noticed the presence of overgrown pride within himself, something he was unaware of all this time. He realized that his own breath was constantly changing, and there was now a recognizable presence of an emperor-level aura within his body. As he continued to gain knowledge, insights, and experience, he was basically gaining wisdom, and this was having a major effect on not just his personality or temperament but also on his cultivation. The little book demon was staring at him with his eyes opened wide like those of a dead fish. Being a book demon himself, he certainly understood what was going on. He could clearly see how Yishuan was so effortlessly reading books using his soul search skill and absorbing those books' essence like it was no big deal. Meanwhile, his cultivation was also rising gradually as a result of that. In fact, even book demons did the exactly same thing. A book demon also needed to comprehend and then extract the essence of a book to enhance knowledge and cultivation, so it usually took a lot of time. Yishuan was now simply like a humanoid book demon, but unlike other book demons, he was able to thoroughly understand the contents of countless books and absorb their essence, and that too to an extent of exaggeration when compared to other book demons and their slow comprehension speed. The little book demon was shocked. How could someone understand the essence of a book so easily, as if it was no more difficult than chopping vegetables? Most people did not succeed even after using soul search to obtain so much knowledge so fast. The little book demon was shocked by the scene unfolding in front of his eyes. It was basically impossible to digest such huge amounts of information so fast, and there were so many books in the library that a normal expert might have to take multiple rebirths in order to learn from all the books. But what Yishuan was doing right now was simply unprecedented, and the result of that was right in front of the little demon's eyes, as he could see Yishuan's aura changing constantly. This was bizarre and unscientific scene. Well, the little book demon would never know that this was all because of the mysterious space that was hidden in Yishuan's mind. It was like a million times more efficient computing machine than the best supercomputer made on the earth. Hence, Yishuan's comprehension speed was off the charts, and he was basically reading an entire row of books from a large bookshelf with just one sweep of soul search. Although he still had to go through a lot of books because there were countless bookshelves in this so-called small world of books, and his progress so far was insignificant. However, Yishuan was not in a hurry, as he could feel his own cultivation level rising bit by bit. In fact, he could also feel the gaps in his previous knowledge being filled by the bits of information coming from these books. He felt like entering a profound world of knowledge where he could learn anything so long as he wanted to. Today, Yishuan discovered that if the world of knowledge was like a sea, then his own possession of knowledge was nothing more than a drop so far. There was so much to learn that his blood was boiling with excitement in the anticipation of what might be the next new thing he was going to learn. Yi Xuan knew that if he could comprehend all this knowledge, then he would certainly be able to advance to a realm of unfathomable proportions, though he would still need to accumulate huge amounts of energy to have breakthroughs in the process of reaching the realms above. However, this much knowledge and experience should be enough for a long period of time to help in upgrading his cultivation level. So long as he had sufficient stock of energy, he should be able to have multiple breakthroughs overnight. In other words, he was experiencing the famous overnight epiphany right now since he was obtaining centuries worth of knowledge so quickly. The little book demon was flying next to him but did not dare to disturb his comprehension process. At this time, Yi Mo was also on his side and concocting Ling Dan in order to keep Yi Zaiwen's comprehension uninterrupted at all times. He was also playing the part of Yi Zaiwen's bodyguard. The rise in Yi Zaiwen's cultivation was very fast, but this was useless without the support of massive amount of energy. Tianyuan Mirror was the only source of Ling Dan, and Yi Xuan had consumed a lot of Ling Dan on the Demon Island. Since the consumption pace was high, so production pace must match or at least outmatch the consumption pace in order to have a sustainable comprehension process. The situation was compelling Yi Mo to maintain a constant production of Ling Dan in order to avoid a lack of fuel for keeping the mysterious space running non-stop. Fortunately, however, Yi Mo had not been resting for the last more than half a year on the Demon Island. While Yi Xuan was busy killing gods' descendants and absorbing divinity from their bodies, he also used their nadins for his cultivation enhancement. The flesh and blood of those demon beasts were all absorbed by Yi Mo to restore Tianyuan Mirror to the peak of truth 9th stage. Yes, Tianyuan Mirror was at a higher level than Yi Xuan right now. This was the reason why Yi Mo's speed of concocting Ling Dan had an unprecedented increase, enough to meet the consumption needs of Yi Xuan. So this book is on the art of war and battle tactics. I never thought it to actually have so many hidden secrets. Yi Xuan muttered while digesting the art of war and all sorts of tricks and tactics mentioned in the book. Now, even if he was suddenly asked to command a huge army of 1,000,000 soldiers, he would not find it troublesome. This was the benefit of having a full understanding of the art of war. Being a lone warrior who preferred being alone even during fights, this was a fairly unique concept. Yi Xuan had to accept the fact that he had always been a brute who used sheer power over tactics to deal with his opponents. Now, he was slowly changing bit by bit as he continued to read the books on various topics. After reading several books on military and war strategy, he comprehended the combined essence he gathered from them and suddenly felt a sublimation occurring in his temperament. He had started to understand the mindset of soldiers and generals better and better. He also gained a better understanding of how to manipulate people, both friends and foes, to do his bidding. Yi Zaiwen's aura was changing dramatically and gaining the characteristics of the imposing aura of a commander. If his friends would see him right now after the transformation, they would say that he no longer looked like an uninterested and unsocial teenager who mostly focused on cultivation and less provoked. Now, he looked like an experienced commander who, if needed, could easily command soldiers at his fingertips. Of course, he was benefiting a lot by using this method, but his soul search was gathering too much information and the time for processing was less in comparison since he needed to properly analyze the information and separate out the valuable knowledge. However, this was taking much more time since he had to process unnecessary and redundant information as well. It was said that truly invincible experts could achieve the so-called level of mastery where they could manipulate one world law to command 100 world laws at once, like the demon emperor who had never practiced sword martial techniques but was still able to display unsurpassed sword skills. In fact, the demon emperor's sword intention attack was far superior to that of the old man whom Yi Xuan met in the ruins, located at the bottom of the East China Sea. Yi Xuan certainly had not reached that level of mastery yet, but he was using the method of analogy to comprehend tough concepts and ideas. He was basically using practical examples to understand complex concepts. Yi Xuan used the same method of comprehension by analogy to thoroughly comprehend the art of war. That was why he was able to easily understand the same military concepts when dealt in several other military books. Yi Xuan was fascinated as his self-confidence was building up naturally. He continued to move forward little by little while gathering knowledge. There were some travel notes, miscellanies, personal letters, and books that were covered in thick layer of dust. Apparently, no one had opened them in a long time. Yi Shiwen could not help but sigh with emotion as he could clearly see that the authors must have been true sages and legends to have compiled such hard-to-obtain knowledge in these long-forgotten books. However, even if most of this section of knowledge was valuable but not of immediate use to him. Of course, like others, he would also not waste valuable time and resources in obtaining this kind of knowledge, but he still read them and stored unprocessed data in the mysterious space for future use. Chapter 272, Devil Art's Power Technique. Yi Zaiwen's inner state was naturally not going to be same after the crazy absorption spree. Slowly, Yi Zaiwen's aura began to transform from that of a soldier to a general, then to a king, emperor, and moving closer to that of a sophist. This was a natural outcome since he was absorbing the knowledge of a lot of people, for example, unrivaled profound scholars, Zen Buddhists, Taoist experts, etc. All of them with distinct features and expertise in various fields, and since each of them had reached the heavenly level of understanding in their respective fields of expertise, Yi Shiwen had to benefit accordingly by gaining essences of miscellaneous knowledge. He was just like a gluttonous person who was using mysterious space to devour knowledge and gaining from that. He was slowly approaching the level of understanding of a sophist. He was very much enjoying this whole mass study session. He was slowly walking inside while reading all the books in his path. He would sometimes come across two very different perspectives to the same idea, then, he would sit cross-legged on the ground to ponder about the newly obtained contradicting ideas to find out the correct one. For example, life or death, which one is eternal? One must plan ahead for unforeseen problems, or one should not give in to groundless fears, which one is correct? There were a lot of confusing and contradictory concepts in this world, and Yi Shiwen needed to choose which perspective he wanted to follow. Who is this insolent person that dares to peep at my kingdom? As soon as Yi Shiwen sent his soul search into a royal Tao book, suddenly, a huge ghostly figure emerged from it. It looked like the ghost of a majestic emperor. Yi Shiwen could see traces of uprightness and elegance, however, its cold eyes were glaring at him. Yi Shiwen noticed from the author's name inscribed on the book that the author used to be a great emperor of some ancient dynasty that ruled Great Yu State in the past. So, the ghostly figure apparently belonged to that emperor. A mere book demon like you thinks of himself as the master of this book's world? I suggest you open your eyes and see that your book is in my hand. The source of your very existence is in my grasp. I guess that should be enough to tell who is the boss here. Yi Shiwen sneered and said. After surviving the baptism of the demon emperor's imposing aura, now the imposing aura of no other emperor could have any effect on Yi Shiwen. How dare you? The ghostly figure shouted and flew towards Yi Shiwen. It suddenly used royal fist technique to throw consecutive punches at him, summoning forth a tornado of enormous and powerful dragon chi. The emperor must have been at a profound realm when he was alive, no wonder his ghost was so powerful in the form of a small book demon. According to the history records, the Great Yu State had reached the peak of governance and dominance and had also become a well-known country among the 10 countries of the southeast region when he was the emperor of this country. His theory of governance was so popular that it was recorded, based on his personal notes, as rules to be followed by the other rulers in the course of history. After a lapse of innumerable years, Yi Yuan School collected the notes and stored it up in this library in the form of a book. This book demon's power was clearly above truth 9th peak level, perhaps reaching complete truth realm. Well, aren't you an ungrateful one? Yi Shiwen snorted as his hand transformed into a dragon claw and went forward to grasp the tornado. He directly caught the tornado and routed it like it was nothing. How is this possible? Who are you? The book demon couldn't believe what he just saw. His most powerful attack was easily caught and crushed by Yi Shiwen. He screamed like a scaredy cat and immediately tried to return to the book. A book demon was in the end just a book demon, he could never transform into a true emperor he used to be. Yi Shiwen thought of something, then caught the fleeing book demon and instantly annihilated it before it could hide inside his book. After destroying the book demon, Yishuan moved towards the next book. He did not need to consume that book demon's body as he had already absorbed the book's essence with the help of mysterious space. Yishuan tossed that book demon's leftover consciousness over to the little book demon who was showing him around. And suddenly, the little book demon's cultivation level rose from truth first stage to truth fifth stage after assimilating the essence of knowledge from that dead emperor's book demon. His timid appearance was abruptly replaced by the domineering appearance of an emperor as soon as he absorbed the majestic essence of the dead emperor's notebook. The little book demon was surprised, but he immediately recollected himself, then cupped his hands and respectfully said, "Thank you, brother." Yishuan did not say anything in reply and continued to walk forward. Yishuan seemed like just taking a walk but was simultaneously devouring entire bookshelf worth of books at a time. Days passed one by one and in a blink of an eye, 3 months had passed already. Yishuan stayed in the library for a full 3 months and nearly read half of the books. His reading capacity had extended to outstanding proportions. Even his cultivation level had also reached a higher level than before. On the way, Yishuan also encountered several book demons that attacked him. He never took the initiative to attack any of them because his motive was just to obtain knowledge, possibly without getting involved in a meaningless slaughter. However, not all book demons understood his motive and considered him as an intruder. They had spent hundreds of thousands of years in those books and now considered this library as their home. Many of them were naive and did not know that there was actually another world outside this one. Thus, whenever Yishuan used soul search on their books, they did not consider it polite and basically felt like being attacked. Hence, they also attacked him and were mercilessly butchered as a result of that. Thanks to this pattern, the little book demon benefited a lot by absorbing the essence of fallen book demons and eventually reached the peak of truth 9th stage. Now, most of the times when book demons tried to attack Yishuan, he would willingly step in to deal with them so that there was no longer a need for Yishuan to personally act. Yishuan noticed that this world of books was predominantly run by the law of the jungle and driven by instincts of the book demons. He also noticed the little book demon was very grateful to him for indirectly helping him in leveling up. He would never get to know that Yishuan did it on purpose. Yishuan had gained exotic and ancient wisdom and knew the importance of having powerful pawns to be manipulated at will. However, the good thing was that Yishuan was not corrupted by excessive wisdom and power as he had consumed all sorts of knowledge, including both the advantages of evil ideas and importance of peaceful concepts of kindness and compassion. Hence, in the end, he was fairly balanced on the brim of equilibrium between good and bad, and could use knowledge from both sides to his advantage. As Yishuan continued to proceed further into the depths of this small world, he discovered something that he never thought to find them in Yuan School's library. Yes, he found books on devil arts, several secret devil books on devil power techniques. There was a huge section of the library that was fully dedicated to devil books and had basically turned into a territory, ruled by book devils. Jia Jia, a human has intruded into our territory, Jia Jia, he is really bold. Listen everyone, we are going to devour that human's flesh and blood. He looks strong, so our cultivation should have an incredible progress. Kill him. Yishuan listened to what they said and felt as if he had really walked into the territory of devils. However, they were just the book demons derived from books on devil power techniques. Of course, they did not look like other book demons as they had taken the form of real-life devils. Hence, people called them book devils. They regarded themselves as true devils. Fortunately or unfortunately, these book devils took birth in the devil books and had stayed in this small world throughout their lives. So, their behavior was kind of understandable considering their inherent urge for violence, supremacy, and territorial dominance. Brother, you have done enough for me. Now, let me deal with them and contribute a little towards returning the favor. The little book demon said with respect. He had already started acting as a little brother to Yishuan and looked up to him. Not to mention, his cultivation right now was higher than that of Yishuan. The little book demon's battle efficiency had also reached a tyrannical level by absorbing the essences of several book demons. He dashed forward at a lightning speed and instantly barged into the formation of devil soldiers. Although there were a lot of devils in the devil army, most of them were weak and very few were formidable enough to sustain his attacks. The book devils did not stand a chance against him as he had not just leveled up in the last 3 months. By absorbing the essence of mighty warriors and legendary people, he himself had come to possess an extremely domineering and aggressive imposing aura. Not to mention, his fighting style was elegant and efficient, unlike those devils. Die devils! The little book demon shouted and released a flood of terrifying Zhen Yuan that wiped out most devil soldiers in one fell swoop, then absorbed their essences. Who dares to run wild in our territory? No one messes with devil race. At this time, a book devil of truth 9th peak suddenly appeared from nowhere and rushed towards the little book demon. He had a huge troll-like figure and seemed like a real devil. The two sides indulged in a violent battle and complementary waves swept out in all directions. Yi Shuan immediately safeguarded the devil books he wanted to study and saved them from the aftermath of the battle. He sat down cross-legged and began to scan devil power techniques and analyze them in the mysterious space. Although devil race was infamous for terrorizing all of the 10,000 worlds, the power techniques developed by them were certainly one of the best. Yi Shuan had been using devil wings and knew that there were a lot of other awesome devil power technique he should check out. An ordinary expert might have to consider whether to practice devil arts or not. After all, it had a very bad reputation in the world and there were chances of self-harm if not practiced properly, but Yi Shuan did not need to face any of such issues. He had a favorable impression of devil power technique. In fact, devil wings repeatedly saved his life several times in the past. Yi Shuan believed that as long as he could make good use of a technique, the source of its origin did not matter. Not to mention, he could always get rid of the bad and retain the good elements of any technique with the help of mysterious space. Dash. Chapter 273, Fighting had entered a superheated phase. The fiendish book devil did not a chance again the little book demon and was on a continuous retreat spree. Though the book devil was very strong but his opponent was a lot stronger. With the help of Yi Shuan, the little book demon swallowed several formidable book demons and many of whom were superior to this fiendish book devil. Bang! The book devil could not block a full-fledged attack of truth 9th peak level and was sent flying by a massive explosion. After that, he was killed and then swallowed by the little book demon. Yi Shuan glanced at the victorious book demon and also saw an evil look floating in his eyes. At this time, Yi Shuan was busy scanning devil power techniques and choosing best ones to digest and absorb in his sea of knowledge. Traces of Machi could be seen emerging out of his body and proliferating into the air, but was soon annihilated as Machi could not affect his conscience. Yi Zaiwen's mind or conscience was like an absolute existence and couldn't be tweaked with so easily. Yi Shuan was successful in completely absorbing devil power techniques to the extent of taking a leap from quantitative change to a qualitative change. Yes, it was time for a breakthrough. If his inner state was like a water tank, then the energy contained in his body was like water. However, now this water tank was not big enough to accommodate the ever-increasing energy content. If his inner state was like a water tank, then the stock of energy was almost the size of a pool. This comparison was enough to give a valid reason why there was a need for a breakthrough, to increase the size of the water tank in order to accommodate excess energy. Yi Zaiwen's inner state itself was much stronger than others on the same cultivation level, not to mention after the recent studying spree in the last few months, he managed to stretch the water tank to the size of a pool. And this was enough to accommodate all of the water he had accumulated since the last breakthrough. His cultivation had already reached a perfect situation that was required before each breakthrough. Now he had no choice but to have a breakthrough, otherwise, continuing further wouldn't have any great effect. However, his cultivation and accumulation were extremely profound, to an extent that once he had a breakthrough, his battle efficiency and energy content would reach complete truth level. In that case, no one in the truth realm would be his opponent. The next step was half-step legendary realm. Easy to say, but only a few were able to take the so-called half-step into the legendary realm. However, Yi Zaiwen's accumulation had increased up to a terrifying level, and after the breakthrough, even an expert of half-step legendary realm wouldn't be able to kill him. Yi Shiwen would still have a chance of escape. Although still insufficient, he wanted to step into half-step legendary realm because only after that, he might have a chance to participate in the so-called assessment. If so many people were choosing to stay at half-step legendary realm, there definitely was a reason behind this kind of strategy, and he also wanted to test it out. However, food should be eaten only a mouthful at a time, and Yi Shiwen knew this fact quite well. Now that the decision was made, he was ready to have a breakthrough in the library while Yi Mo and the little book demon were going to be his bodyguards. Though right now, these two bodyguards were somewhat tensed as this was the world of books, infested with book demons. Although not all books had given birth to book demons, there were still enough to pose a threat to him, and especially the book devils. Of course, most book demons preferred to stay in their books, but a breakthrough was going to cause turbulence in this world and might attract the attention of unwanted guests. A great danger was associated with having a breakthrough here, but Yi Shiwen had already made his decision and no one could change his mind now. Yi Mo immediately commanded Tianyuan Mirror and sent it hovering over Yi Zaiwen's head. It released a scarlet curtain that enveloped Yi Shiwen completely from all sides. The little book demon was not far from there and seemed all prepared to perform his bodyguard duty. He held a great sense of gratitude towards Yi Shiwen and considered him like a big brother. He witnessed Yi Zaiwen's mercy and compassion firsthand and managed to leave the lowest position of truth first stage and reached quite a high position of truth ninth stage in the world of book demons. Now, he had enough qualification to send an application to Yi Yuan School and get out of this world, thereby becoming a true disciple in Yi Yuan School. All thanks to Yi Shiwen, and he did not know what he must do to return the favor. Yi Shiwen changed his destiny and he was willing to do anything for this big brotherly figure, even by putting his life on the line. Yi Shiwen sat down cross-legged and took out 2 half-step legendary zombie cores. Suddenly, a majestic deadki spew out into the air, and it seemed like the devil territory instantly evolved into the kingdom of death. Yi Shiwen wasn't surprised, as these 2 cores of half-step legendary zombies were bound to be terrifying, so this kind of outcome was understandable. Rippling deadki proliferated into the air, but the scarlet curtain blocked its path and contained it firmly around Yi Shiwen. At the same time, swirling Zhen Yuan came out of his body and began to absorb the essence of the 2 cores. The raw energy first passed through Tianyuan Mirror and entered phases of filtration and purification. Only after that, the purest form of energy was absorbed by Yi Shiwen. Although a major section of impure energy was stripped out, the remaining energy was pure and more than enough for having a breakthrough. Large fluctuation of energy around his body eventually began to attract the attention of several old book demons. Damn! This man is tyrannical. He completely obliterated the kingdom of book devils. But he is just an expert of truth realm, how can he be so tyrannical? I cannot believe my eyes. GGA, I sense deadki. I am so happy. This is really a lucky day for Shimo. At this time, there was a sudden burst of deadki on top of a bookshelf. A set of greedy eyes looked at the 2 zombie cores held in the hands of Yi Shiwen, who was deeply engrossed in meditating under the protection of Tianyuan Mirror. One must know that the owner of these greedy eyes was none other than a book devil that had come out of a secret book on deadki-based devil technique. However, there was no deadki available in the library, and so there was no way for Shimo to practice this secret devil technique. But, when he saw 2 deadki-rich cores in Yi Zaiwen's hands, he could not hide a sudden burst of happiness in his heart. He was just one step away from stepping into half-step legendary realm, and these cores could make his wish come true. He was actually one of the top-ranked book demons in the entire library. Jia, those dead cores is mine. Shimo gave out a loud and sharp cry, and a large hand that was purely made up of dead went towards Yi Shiwen. Stop! At this time, the little book demons suddenly saw that Shimo was planning to attack Yi Shiwen. The little book demon immediately used Royal Fist technique and released a powerful attack that was so potent that it was almost on verge of reaching the complete truth realm. This was a very terrifying martial art, and as soon as it was invoked, the atmosphere suddenly changed and it seemed as if the entire world must obey his order. Emo was also getting slightly anxious at this moment because he himself had never witnessed a devil using deadki-based attack. Humph, you alone cannot stop me, kid. I can eat you whole and on go, you understand that? Shimo got furious and shouted, while at the same time, he changed the direction of his own attack towards the little book demon. Shimo was at complete truth realm, whereas the little book demon was almost about to enter the same, but there was still enough gap between their strengths, not to mention Shimo could be considered one of the strongest experts on the same level. Boom! The little demon's royal fist attack was compromised and the complementary waves of aftermath crashed against Tianyuan Mirror's protection barrier. Afterward, Shimo's deadki attack further went towards the little book demon to finish him off. Bang! The little book demon stepped back while also trying to use his arms to block the attack but failed in doing so. Along with his blood spattering out, there appeared a huge wound on his arm, to an extent that it was almost close to being torn off his body, which was very frightening. If he had been slow even for an instant, then he would inevitably have lost an arm today. Gee! A cruel smile appeared on Shimo's face as he licked his lips and said, "Jia Jia, you look tasty, so this old man has decided to eat you, but first I will swallow the dead cores and step into half-step legendary realm. Then I will do you the favor of being my food. As long as I am alive, you'll never succeed." The little book demon said in a firm voice, and also noticed that the last attack exactly the same as the one used by his previous devil opponent, though this one was a bit more potent in comparison. The little book demon decided to use a devil technique against Shimo. So, he released Machi from his body that suddenly transformed into the shadow of Devil Emperor with long horns and steady build. Ha, you think using a childish technique such as this will have any effect on me? I will bring an end to your wishful thinking, kid. Behold the power of my eternal deadki arts. Shimo laughed strangely, then instantly fired a punch, releasing a stream of deadki into the air. The surging deadki was so horrifying that it seemed as if it was defying the very concept of 6 reincarnations and literally reversing the concept altogether. Boom! The two attacks collided and Shimo's attack expectedly had an upper hand yet again. Shimo's skill was much more than that of the little book demon, then this outcome was understandable. Jia Jia, it's time to get my cores. Shimo was about to attack Tianyuan Mirror's protective screen, when suddenly, a spear came out of nowhere and stabbed him right in the chest, nailing him into the ground. Shimo turned to look what happened just now and realized that the spear had been thrown by the little book demon. He immediately got furious and shouted, "If you are really so eager to die, I'll gladly fulfill your wish. I changed my mind about first seizing the cores because now I am gonna devour you first." Shimo condensed a big devil claw that was made up of a mixture of deadki and inchi. And the very next instant, the devil claw went towards the little book demon at an incredibly fast speed as if to rip him apart. However, at this time, he heard a loud shout, "Stop!" A tyrannical aura engulfed the entire area all of a sudden. Then a huge dragon claw appeared out of nowhere and advanced towards the devil claw. Boom! The devil claw was instantly grabbed and then crushed by the dragon claw, resulting in a massive explosion. Chapter 274, Overturning the Heaven's Seal, Boom! The devil claw was instantly annihilated by Yi Zaiwen's attack. "You are courageous, I give you that." Yi Shuwen sneered, then stood up after having completely absorbed the zombie cores. He had already broken into Truth 8th stage, and this breakthrough was a lot easier than the previous one. If Thaner's state was a water tank and energy was water, then he had already been successful in the expansion of water tank, and in having done so, the difficulty could be imagined, but now he had already built a good pool of energy to keep the irrigation line active. He had enough energy to have this breakthrough, and even after that, he still had a lot of spare energy. After stepping into Truth 8th stage, his battle strength had already reached complete Truth realm because his accumulation was way too much. In fact, reaching such a state was impossible for anyone else. What is going on here? Shimo was confused and obviously did not know what just happened. Damn, how did you absorb my cores so fast? How dare you, human? Now, brace yourself because I am going to eat you to make up for my loss. Shimo's anger level was off the charts. After all, a golden opportunity of stepping into half-step legendary realm was destroyed by Yishuan right in front of his eyes. Shimo's whole body was instantly covered in deadkey fire, also releasing a putrid smell in the air, and suddenly, several bone claws approached Yishuan to tear him to pieces. This deadkey fire was very insidious and could melt shields and barriers like butter with the mere touch. Die, 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 die. Shimo entered a wild rage mode and immediately attacked Yishuan. Your inconsequential technique is not even worth witnessing. Yishuan sneered and stretched out his big hands. His golden body made a sudden appearance and his golden hands went forward to grasp the incoming attack. Yishuan appeared just like a reincarnated overlord as he directly caught the deadkey fire attack. ZZZZ. The deadkey fire was still trying its best to corrode Yizaiwan's palms but did not succeed in doing so and suddenly got extinguished like it was nothing. There was an incredible look of disbelief on the little book demon's face because Shimo was a well-known powerhouse in the library, though not among the top ones, but powerful enough to scare most book demons. However, that Shimo's most terrible attack wasn't able to put even a scratch on Yizaiwan's skin. The little book demon's mind was blown by this scene because he just couldn't imagine the extent of his elder brother's strength. What? This is impossible. Shimo looked incredibly at Yishuan. I cannot believe my eyes. My zombie art technique should be invincible. Invincible, you say? Don't even try to be so full of yourself, especially in front of me. Yishuan sneered as he had actually killed 2 half-step legendary zombies earlier and this Shimo was nothing like those genuine zombies. Shimo was just a book demon, belonging to a book on corpse devil practice techniques. I'd like to see what kind of secret lies in your zombie arts. Yishuan also had a keen interest in zombie arts. If a person dies and his soul leaves the body, then what exactly brought the corpse back to life as a zombie? In this world, zombies were considered undead, somewhere between alive and dead. Rippling mountain seal. Yishuan shouted loudly and a huge printed ribbon with a seal on it, enormous and powerful, instantly appeared from the void and smashed down like a falling meteor. This was a very horrible scene, as if the earth would turn inside out. Not to mention, this attack was locked on Shimo and there was no place to hide. This was the stunning heritage that Yishuan obtained from the tomb slave. The name of this inheritance was called Overturning the Heaven's Seal. In his previous life, he had heard about extremely destructive magical weapons, and this was a similarly stunning attack arcane, derived directly from the source of an extinct secret sect. Yishuan got this ancient arcane attack technique as a reward and its destructive power was unparalleled. This secret arcane technique was divided into 3 stages: Rippling Mountain Seal, Inverting the Ocean Seal and Overturning the Heaven Seal. Yishuan had already mastered all 3 stages, but at his current skill level, he could only use Rippling Mountain Seal. However, its destructive power was ridiculously large, enough to smash down an expert of complete truth realm. Although Yizaiwan's skill was far better than his, the power of Rippling Mountain Seal was needless to say. Shimo's thinking process was a little slow, but he finally reacted. He ultimately realized that Yishuan was an absolute existence and that he himself did not stand a chance against Yishuan. At least that was the case at present. Even his most powerful attack couldn't break Yizaiwan's defense. Do not kill me, please do not kill me. I can explain to you the most exquisite zombie theory, allowing you progress by leaps and bounds in deadkey arts. Shimo quickly shouted in a panicked state. I do not need it. Yishuan already had mysterious space, so he was not interested in this offer. Boom! There sounded a terrifying fulmination noise and Shimo was smashed into a group of essence, grasped in Yizaiwan's big hand. Yishuan glanced at the little book demon and threw the group of essence towards him. The little book demon's body immediately absorbed the group of essence and began to digest it rapidly. After a long time, the imposing aura of the little book demon suddenly stagnated for a moment, followed by his aura exploding the very next instant, sending him directly into the complete truth realm. He was at the peak of truth 9th stage, narrowly failing to step into the complete truth realm, but Yi Shuwen helped him once again in this vital breakthrough. Swallowing other book demons or book devils was the most efficient method for book demons to enhance cultivation. I don't know how to show my gratitude to you, brother, for showing such graciousness towards me. The little book demon cupped his hands across the chest and sincerely said. If Yi Shuwen was not there to help him, he would have continued to stay at the bottom in the hierarchy of book demons. Would you like me to take you out of this place? Yi Shuwen stared intently at the little book demon and asked. Of course, I would absolutely love that. I have been willing to get out of here for such a long time. The little book demon quickly answered, as he was aware of living in this small library world all this time, and he was also aware of existence of a large world outside this small space. He wanted to see the world where Yuan School existed, and the tyrannical guard wouldn't allow any of the book demons to go outside. Yuan School was afraid of evil book demon causing havoc in their world, so these book demons weren't allowed to come out of the library world. In order to go out, they must take refuge in Yuan School and contribute significantly by giving their distinguished service. The book demons were expected to get real strong in order to get an opportunity of going out to perform tasks for Yuan School as deacons. Only then, they would have a strong chance of becoming a full-fledged Yuan School's disciple, which was again a rare opportunity. However, such a rare case was in minority and sometimes wouldn't happen for hundreds of years. For him, this was a luxury that even after having taken birth few decades back, with Yi Zaiwen's help, he could enjoy becoming one of such rare cases and might have a chance to go out of this world. Reaching complete truth realm was literally a dream come true for him, and all thanks to Yi Shuwen. The gratitude he felt towards Yi Shuwen was naturally difficult to put into words. Good, I have established a faction in the outer world, it's called Qianyu faction. But I must leave Yuan School to join True Martial University, so I am going to find a way to make you a true disciple. You will assume the position of the leader of Qianyu faction in my absence, what do you say? This was his plan all along. In his absence, Qianyu faction, being a truth-level faction, was going to need a strong leader, as there already were several true disciples in this faction and none of them were strong enough to be the leader. One true disciple was enough in an ordinary faction, but Qianyu faction was the faction of a pro-disciple and must be led by a competent leader. Yi Zaiwen's plan was to cultivate this little book demon and make him competent enough to assume role of Qianyu faction's leader, then he would feel relieved while going to True Martial University. Now an expert of complete truth realm was going to safeguard Qianyu faction, plus Yi Shuwen had already reconciled with Chu Jingkai, the strongest disciple in the entire sect. With all these preparations, Yi Shuwen was reassured that Qianyu faction, his family, and friends would stay safe in his absence. Of course, Yi Shuwen didn't miss to witness the little book demon's loyalty towards him when he was willing to risk his own to protect Yi Shuwen. Yi Shuwen had already seen through the little book demon's honest attitude, otherwise, he wouldn't have put so much effort in nurturing him. I am very much willing, I surely would. The little book demon nodded and couldn't hide his excitement. He was not just going to become a true disciple, he would also become the leader of a faction. This was really a dream come true. Do you have a name? Yi Shuwen asked. No. The little book demon said in a somewhat embarrassed way. Such being the case, I'll give you a name. From now on, your name shall be Yi Shu, also from now on, you are a member of Yi clan. Dash. Chapter 275, Freeloader Wolf Cub. After killing Shimo, Yi Shuwen did not continue to go into the depths of the library. Although he wanted to read all of the books, there were a lot of powerful book demons ahead and many of them were at half-step legendary level and above. At present, he was not an opponent of these tyrannical book demons, but he was happy to have benefited a lot in this library. He stopped accumulating knowledge and went to the library section where books and records on True Martial University were kept. TMU was set up a long time ago. After human ancestors came to Zhenwujia, in order to resist the attacks from demon beasts, they established a sacred place, dedicated to preserving and enhancing martial arts heritage from ancient times. The history of humankind was extremely long, and finding out the concrete specifics related to its beginning was now impossible to some extent. Because of various wars and other reasons, the history of mankind had a lot of loopholes and dark eras. A lot of things were buried in the dust of history, perhaps deliberately or circumstantially. One could almost say that the southern region and even the entire Zhenwujia, every large or small influence in the vicinity, more or less, had their origins in TMU. In fact, most sects and factions were once started by the disciples of TMU in the past. Generally speaking, all these books gave only introductory information regarding TMU, which made him somewhat disappointed, but in the end, anyway, knowing something was better than not knowing anything. Yishuan made up his mind and decided that it was time to go back. He took Yishu along and went out of the library. It was not easy for book demons to leave the library unless they had sufficient merit points or there was someone with authority willing to take responsibility. Yishuan fulfilled this criterion quite well, being a protodisciple who was destined to become a great man in the future. Taking away Yishu was simply not a problem, he would just need to lend some merit points to Yishu for the time being until the payback. Since Yishuan had accumulated a lot of merit points during Qianji Island incident and never had time to use them, so now, he could easily lend them to Yishu for the sake of his freedom. You really want to take him away? The old guard looked at Yishuan with a somewhat unexpected look flashing in his eyes. The most surprising thing was a drastic upgrade in Yishu's level in the last few months. Yishu was one of the few book demons who performed chores for this old guard, so he certainly knew the extent of Yishu's strength before he left off with Yishuan. Yes. Yishuan said. Well, looking at his current cultivation, he can truly apply for a transfer. The old guard smiled and looked somewhat happily at Yishu, then said, It seems you have obtained a large fortune this time, haven't you? Your future prospects shall be limitless. Thanks a lot, senior. Yishu's eyes were full of tears. If not for this old man, a weak book demon like himself would have perished long ago. He would either have been caught as a slave for some powerful book demon or would have been devoured. The law of the jungle was prevalent in this library and he was able to survive this long only because of this old man. Yishuan, this old guy is a book demon, gee, such a formidable monster he is. At this time, Yimo's voice sounded in Yizaiwan's mind and finally confirmed the old man's true identity. Being a book demon with extremely profound cultivation, he was tasked with guarding this library. And he alone was enough to act as a deterrent against countless book demons. After saying farewell to the old guard, both of them went out of the library. This was the first time Yishu was stepping in this world and one could see excitement spread all over his face. After spending a few months in the world of books, Yizaiwan's cultivation had undergone an enormous sublimation. Yishuan returned to Qianyu Peak and found out that the entire place had been ruined by the wolf cub in his absence. All those cranes and demon beast pets accumulated by Qianyu faction and its members, in more than a year's worth of time, had been devoured by the wolf cub, not to mention even immortality pills and Dawn faced a similar fate. In a short period of 3 months, all these important faction resources had been scourged by this son of a bitch. After coming back, the first scene that greeted Yizaiwan's eyes was, the wolf cub roasting a rabbit beast just the way Yishuan used to do on the demon island. Yishuan got furious when he saw this and gave a solid slap on his face and sent him flying high into the sky. Did he roast and ate all those valuable birds and beasts like this? Yishuan could not believe that the wolf cub would do such a thing in his absence. Since the day Yishuan left Qianyu Peak, the wolf cub had constantly been eating precious demon birds and beasts which were owned by Qianyu faction. No one would dare to stop this bastard, and in fact, there was no one on entire Qianyu Peak that could stop him. He used to be at Truth 8th stage when arrived here, but in the last few months, his strength level directly leaped up to complete Truth Realm, making him only a bit weaker than Yishuan. According to Yimo's guess, although the wolf cub did not remember too much about his own origins, it seemed like he belonged to the bloodline of noble wolf clan that might have disappeared along with ancient heaven. He stayed in his egg for ages, buried under the ground, and lost most of his power, but that did not change the fact that he was a noble wolf and held limitless future prospects. Especially this wolf cub had a sort of amnesia and most of his memories were in a suppressed state right now, otherwise, it would be hard to predict the extent of his power rise once he would regain his lost memories. What did this mean? This meant that this son of a bitch was likely to grow at an unimaginable speed, without facing any bottlenecks in the path, accumulating and regaining the strength back that had worn down with the passage of time. Not to forget, he was of noble descent and was bound to possess inherent talent, so his future progress was going to be very fast. In fact, according to Yi Mo's speculation, the progress speed of both Yi Shiwen and the wolf cub were almost the same. During the last 3 months, Yi Shiwen learned so many things and experienced a number of battles to finally achieve the battle efficiency of complete Truth Realm, while this bastard just wasted time on eating and drinking and reached complete Truth Realm. However, there were a lot of evildoers like Yi Shiwen in this world. Some were born in Truth Realm while some in Legendary Realm. In the end, talent and bloodline were not the only factors that determined success. Yi Shiwen had already defeated many and would continue to do so. Nothing was going to shake his heart that was filled with motivation and ambition. How did a freeloader like you even dare to think about damaging your host's private property? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Yi Shiwen said in a somewhat silent yet scary voice. Wait, stop, you don't need to be so angry. I did not eat too much and made sure that I don't waste food. The wolf cub leisurely flew back to where Yi Shiwen was and said, I was controlling my appetite, you know, do not be so stingy. You have eaten almost all the birds and beasts belonging to faction and now you have the guts to talk back. You have done an irreversible damage and forgiveness isn't something I give that easily. Yi Shiwen was angry because he never expected to see so much chaos on Qianyu Peak, all because of this bastard's selfish and immature attitude. Now, it had become absolutely necessary to teach this spoiled wolf prince a lesson. Yi Shiwen went back to his palace and invited over Yi Feng and Yi Ruxue. Little brother, you have not only made our parents proud, you have also earned a big long face for Yi Yuan school. Yi Ruxue patted Yi Zaiwen's shoulder and said with a smile. Yi Shiwen smiled back and thought that she was still the same, hadn't changed one bit. Not to mention, he still cherished his family just the way he did earlier. Getting stronger did not change him either, neither did it change his identity or the love towards his family and friends. I heard that foolish 8th prince tried his best to kill you. Yi Ruxue asked, despite knowing that the 8th prince was already dead, but she could not help but furiously clench her teeth. She remembered how that 8th prince had tried to use her younger brother as a stepping stone and had also used extreme methods against him. She was actually very happy that Yi Shiwen got rid of that madman. Although Yi Zaiwen's present strength was far beyond hers, in her eyes, he was still her little brother whom she used to protect all the time. As long as she was around, no one dared to bully her little brother and she still adored him the same way. Yes. Yi Shiwen began to describe the events in detail and his 2 siblings were secretly speechless with admiration. Although he was not at all trying to boast or something in explaining the whole incident superficially, but both Yi Feng and Yi Ruxue just couldn't stop themselves from getting flabbergasted. After all, even after being at Truth's 6th stage, Yi Shiwen had single-handedly defeated 2 experts who were at Truth 8th peak at that time. They could clearly feel the intensity of situation and realized how close to death Yi Shiwen had been in a short span of 6 months, and that too not once or twice, but a lot many times. Yi Shiwen appeared very majestic on the outside. Not to mention, he also held the historical and unprecedented record of becoming a prodisciple in the shortest span of time. No one could imagine that he had experienced many life and death situations and had risked his life several times in deadly battles. Brother, sister, I have decided to go to True Martial University. Yi Shiwen told them the real purpose behind inviting them here. What? Are you really going to True Martial University? Yi Feng said. You know about it? Yi Shiwen asked in a somewhat perplexed manner. Although TMU's presence was well known in Zhenwujia, only powerhouses above a certain level were concerned about its reality. For ordinary disciples, core disciples, or even most of the true disciples, its existence was nothing more than a bloated fable. They were absolutely not exposed to the happenings and news about TMU, and it was so much above their own existences that they did not even bother to find out. In fact, even Yishuan got to know about it not long ago. It was obvious that the news and rumors about TMU only existed in the community of some powerhouses. Chapter 276. Pro-disciples get together. Well, recently there has been a huge uproar about TMU in the sect. Yi Feng said, "A lot of people are discussing this matter because I heard that some people from TMU are visiting our sect. They plan to take some pro-disciples and also some true disciples from Yuan school for evaluation. TMU has personally sent over people for procuring disciples?" Yi Shuan asked. Yes, in fact, there has always been a solid connection between TMU and Yuan school. After all, our predecessors used to be the students of TMU, so they are especially sending people to take Brother Qi and other worthy candidates back to TMU. Yi Feng replied. This was clearly a kind of preferential treatment. In fact, TMU must have sent people to recruit from a series of major forces, not just Yuan school. However, there were many small forces and they naturally wouldn't get a chance to enjoy such privilege. If they wanted their disciples to join TMU, they must go through a rigorous selection procedure. Everyone's saying that even the head has been dispatched to entertain the guests from TMU. Yi Feng said, but I have heard that TMU's requirements and standards are off the charts. Maybe, it's too early for you to be thinking about going to TMU. I suggest you wait for the next time, take your time and train to surpass those requirements. I have a reason to go, and it has to be this time. I cannot wait for the next time. Yi Shuan said. Little brother, you really want to go? Is that your final decision? Yi Rushue said with some dismay. If Yi Shuan really went to TMU, she wouldn't be able to see him for a long time. Yes. Yi Shuan very firmly said. Wait, I forgot to tell you one thing. There is a meeting of pro-disciples and true disciples 2 days from now. Brother Chu has sent invitation card. If you go to this meeting, perhaps you will get a chance to participate in the recruitment process. Yi Feng looked at Yi Shuan and said. The realm of truth was unattainable for him right now, so he couldn't accompany his younger brother. Yi Feng clenched his fists and secretly wished for the success of his younger brother. He wasn't too far from entering into the truth realm, but he was still too far from his younger's level. Currently, he was at Xiantian 8th stage and reaching truth realm was only a matter of time. He would most likely step into truth realm before the age of 30 and his progress speed was certainly not slow. Besides him, even Yi Rushue, Zhang Sun Yuan, and the others from the same batch did not show slow progress speed. All of them were bound to become strong experts in coming few decades. In a flash, 2 years had passed and new entrants had flocked to join Yuan school. Yi Feng used to be a new disciple back then, but now, he was a full-fledged senior. However, his younger brother was going to leave the sect. Alright, I will go, but if I do get selected for TMU, then you will attain responsibility of looking after Qianyu faction. Yi Shuan said. I have already reconciled with Chu Jingkai so he and his faction will not try to suppress our faction. If anything big happens, you can also ask him for help. If Yi Feng knew about TMU, he should also know about Chu Jingkai stepping into the legendary realm and its implications in power balance and interior politics. In addition, I have found a strong helper for you. He is a book demon and has already achieved complete truth realm. He is going to become a true disciple of Yuan school and his addition to Qianyu faction will increase the strength of our faction considerably. Yi Shuan said. Brother, thank you so much for doing all this for us. Yi Feng said. He also knew that addition of an expert of complete truth realm was going to give a whole new height to Qianyu faction's status in Yuan school. Unless a pro-disciple like Chu Jingkai personally attacked them, no one else could cause trouble for Qianyu faction in absence of Yi Shuan. It's nothing, brother. Yi Shuan replied with a smile. After spending some time, leisurely chatting with his siblings, Yi Shuwen announced that he was going to indulge himself in closed-door training and no one must disturb him. Yi Feng was now officially going to handle Qianyu faction and Yi Shuwen did not plan to meddle either. Although Yi Shuwen announced about closed-door training, he was not really going to as there was no benefit of only 2 days' worth of training. He preferred resting for 2 days, sitting alone and strategizing about the upcoming recruitment process. Days passed quickly and soon it was time for True Disciples' General Assembly. Yi Shuwen went to the full moon peak and brought along the wolf cub with him. The General Assembly was going to take place at Full Moon Peak, initiated by Chu Jingkai. Of course, he had come forward to entertain the guest as the half-lord of the peak. Chu Jingkai was originally not a disciple of Full Moon Peak but now he was made one all of a sudden. This gave a very clear indication, since the head of Yi Yuan School had always been a disciple of Full Moon Peak for ages, so this sudden change of events was quite inevitable. In other words, Chu Jingkai was the next candidate for the position of sect head, with no visible competitors, so he was made a disciple of Full Moon Peak in a predetermined fashion. Perhaps in the coming few decades or a century, the current sect head would step down from the throne and Chu Jingkai would officially become the head of Yi Yuan School. But this had nothing to do with Yi Shuwen because he was never interested in becoming the head of Yi Yuan School. In fact, he was not even interested to become the leader of Qianyu faction. He preferred freedom over anything. At this time, hundreds of true disciples had gathered in the assembly. Even those who had been indulged in closed-door training for several years came out to participate in this general assembly. No one dared to disrespect Chu Jingkai for obvious reasons. Brother Yi. Brother Yi is here. Greetings to Brother Yi. So he is the famous Brother Yi. He is really such a young and handsome genius. Being 20 years old and holding the title of a pro-disciple, he has really broken all records in Yi Yuan School. Even Sister Hua was not as quick as him. Now, both Yi Shuwen and Hua Menghan commanded respect in the community of true disciples, being the 2 youngest pro-disciples of Yi Yuan School. Yi Shuwen noticed several figures sitting above stone blocks and talking to each other. There were 2 particularly striking women in the group and both of them looked outstanding, like 2 celestial maidens descended from heavens. One of the 2 was Hua Menghan and the other woman was also a pro-disciple, named Shui Yen Luo. She looked a lot different and exceptionally mature compared to Hua Menghan. Qi Fifan was sitting next to these women and there was a usual sunny smile on his face. His golden eyes were dazzling in the sunlight, just like his blonde hair. Next to him, a man in Ilo robe was sitting with a serious look on his face. He was also a pro-disciple named Huang Luochen, and in contrast to Qi Fifan's sunny temperament, he appeared cold like an iceberg. Chu Jingkai was sitting next to him. He was clad in a magnificent Chinese robe and possessed the strongest imposing aura in the group. Among these pro-disciples, there were 2 unknown men also present with somewhat haughty looks on their faces. One of them looked roughly 20 years old, wearing embroidered robe and looked handsome but with a trace of overflowing arrogance riding his face. Especially, whenever he was looking at the true disciples of Yi Yuan School, the arrogant look on face was getting prominent. The other man also looked arrogant. He had a tall stature and was clad in a white robe. Young Yi, you finally came. Chu Jingkai's face revealed a pleased look as his sharp eyes caught Yi Shuwen approaching them. He immediately got up to welcome Yi Shuwen with a bright smile. Greetings to Brother Chu. Yi Shuwen cupped his hands and said, Greetings to all senior brothers and sisters. Excluding Hua Menghan, everyone else here was older than him. They deserved courtesy and respect and he was aware of that. Young Yi, allow me to introduce you to our guests. These 2 gentlemen are from TMU. They are called Young Li Fei and Young Gu Yun. Chu Jingkai introduced them to Yi Shuwen. Actually, Young Li Fei's grandfather was a disciple of Yi Yuan School. It is really fateful for our sect that our predecessors are now part of TMU. Chu Jingkai said. Both Li Fei and Gu Yun were young talents of TMU, and also one of the most outstanding disciples from the lot. However, the clear arrogance visible on their faces was making Yi Shuwen feel somewhat weird. We are lucky and grateful that young Li Fei has personally come to fetch young Huang and the other eligible candidates to TMU. Chu Jingkai smiled and said. Now, he, anyway, could no longer participate in the assessment of TMU. Li Fei nodded and glanced at Yi Shuwen somewhat disdainfully. I don't like these smelly arrogant farts. The wolf cub said to Yi Shuwen. It was rare that both he and Yi Shuwen reached the same point of view this time. I also feel like slapping these two arrogant pricks. Yi Mo's voice rang in Yi Zaiwen's mind. Ha ha ha, young Yi, you and young Li Fei are contemporaries, the two eminent members of the younger generation. Since Li Fei has connections with Yi Yuan School, both of you should very well become close friends in the future. Chu Jingkai said with a smile. I don't think that's going to happen. There's no way this guy is worthy of being called an eminent member of the younger generation. Gu Yun looked disdainfully at Yi Shuwen and said. He obviously did not acknowledge Yi Shuwen at all and did not let go of this chance to insult Yi Shuwen in front of everyone. Perhaps you are considered quite well in the southeast region, but for the disciples of TMU, you are nothing. Gu Yun further said and did not make any concessions while looking down on Yi Shuwen. The southeast region was an inconspicuous place in the entire south region, and TMU attracted geniuses from the entire region, so it was clear that mentioning Yi Zaiwen's fame and relating it only to the southeast region was an attempt to look down on him. Fuck this arrogant piece of shit. How can he dare to behave so arrogantly in front of me? The angry wolf cub said with a furious look flashing in his predatory eyes. He could not accept that someone else was more arrogant than him. As soon as Chi Fifan and the others heard this, suddenly, their complexions changed. Chapter 277, You are a dog. These words were enough to look down on all the experts belonging to the southeast region, let alone Yi Shuwen. Li Fei did not say anything, but he was obviously standing in support of his comrade's statement. Although his own ancestor used to be a disciple of Yi Yuan School, this did not mean that he held some special respect for Yi Yuan School or its people. Even if Yi Yuan School was regarded as an above-average level sect in the southeast region, it was still nothing when considered in respect of entire southern region. In fact, outside the influence of Great Yu State, Yi Yuan School was just another sect and a lot of people hadn't even heard its name yet. Gu Yun said it casually, but the disciples of Yi Yuan School clearly looked pissed off. It didn't matter whether the statement was true or not, they were furious because their sect was insulted right in front of them. Not just Yi Shuwen, even their own pride was assaulted by an outsider. Damn, this arrogant motherfucker. He really wants to pick a fight. I will tear him to shreds with my claws. The wolf cub communicated via soul search in his usual foul-mouthed manner. Obviously, he could no longer bear the arrogant behavior of Gu Yun. Yi Shuwen looked calm on the outside, but his brain was calculating strategies about how to deal with this situation that was going out of hand. Yi Shuwen carefully observed those two men and realized that Gu Yun was obviously less than 50 years old, but was already at the peak of complete truth realm. In Yi Zaiwen's knowledge, only Emperor Chen and other few were talented enough to reach such a high level at a considerably young age. TMU's strength was really not a joke. Li Fei, on the other hand, was already at half-step legendary realm and did not appear like an ordinary expert at all. No wonder he was so full of himself. To be able to reach such a high cultivation level at this age, he must have obtained some kind of precious heritage. Chi Fifan was standing on one side and his face looked bright yet somewhat flushed, however, there was a bright smile spread across his face. No one knew whether he was angry, or not angry, or perhaps very angry. Young Gu, this is not the right way of talking to your peers. This world is large, filled with countless talented people, maybe young Yi is really a genius, as Brother Chu said. Li Fei came out to mediate, but there was still a clear hint of arrogance in his tone. Yi Shuwen simply did not pay any attention to him, just sat down on a stone chair. It seemed as if this whole thing had no impact on him whatsoever. Chu Jingkai smiled wryly and thought that the scene reminded him of the tale in which a megalomaniac meets a hedgehog and gets angry. It was hard to figure out how all of this was going to end in the end. Yi Zaiwen's temperament had always been puzzling others. In fact, right now, only Qi Fifan was slightly aware of what Yi Shiwen might be thinking or how would he react in a situation such as this. Qi Fifan had always been in touch with Yi Shiwen, and out of the older pro-disciples, only he was considered a close rival of Yi Shiwen. It was a common topic of discussion in Yi Yuan school that a battle between Yi Shiwen and Qi Fifan was inevitable because they were the two mythical disciples of Yi Yuan school. Yi Shiwen was the hedgehog here and no one must dare to touch him, but once he was touched, game over. No, Yi Shiwen was not governed by arrogance, neither was he governed by pride and prestige. However, he was well known for crushing overgrown arrogance in the best ways possible. Right now, Chu Jingkai was the host and the two sides were on the verge of a clash. What was the best thing to do in such a situation? Sure enough, everyone saw that Yi Shiwen did not give him face and that was why Li Fei's complexion suddenly turned ugly. Sit down everyone and rest at ease. Today, I have summoned everyone to throw a welcoming dinner for young Li Fei and young Gu Yun. I am so honored that these two have traveled great distances to come to our Yi Yuan school. Chu Jingkai said. Chu Jingkai was a resourceful guy in a somewhat dishonest way. He somehow managed to calm down the heat. After all, the matter at hand did not just concern Yi Shiwen. The true disciples were also hurt by Gu Yun's arrogant statement and Chu Jingkai had to make sure that both Yi Shiwen and the true disciples did not react in a reactionary manner. Yi Shiwen, unexpectedly, did not retaliate in the way everyone was expecting him to. While Chu Jingkai was busy handling the situation, he was busy talking to Yi Mo. This TMU indeed seems like the topmost university of the South region. What do you think? Yi Shiwen said. Maybe, but its disciples are horrible. For some reason, I have really come to hate these two. Yi Mo said. Yi Shiwen was not at all bothered by their arrogant demeanor because he was more excited about getting tough opponents and that too so many of them. A sense of competitiveness, and the urge to beat them all, these were the things going on in his heart. Yi Yuan school did not have many genius evildoers, however, the very thought of encountering an entire batch of geniuses in TMU was exciting in its own way. Chu Jingkai's hands were gently playing zither, giving rise to a smooth, flowing melody like the passing clouds and running water. Chu Jingkai was so good at it that the music was attracting the birds which descended next to him and began to chirp, complimenting the music in a pleasant way. Everyone was immersed in such a beautiful music, only the wolf cub was still irritated and eating food, chewing and biting furiously. Shut up! Suddenly, Gu Yun snorted loudly and shot a deadly beam of energy towards the wolf cub. The wolf cub was eating earnestly with full dedication but his reaction was not slow. He immediately jumped to one side and dodged the attack then shouted, "You fucker, how dare you attack me?" Yi Shiwen obviously did not like what just happened and glared at Gu Yun. Indeed, this attack was meant to kill the wolf cub and Yi Shiwen wouldn't let go so easily. This dog has attained wisdom. Still, it is so insolent. Gu Yun never imagined that the wolf cub would start talking all of a sudden, and neither did he expect to receive this kind of reply from a demon beast pet. You are a dog, your whole family is made up of dogs. The wolf cub was furious and roared at Gu Yun. Gu Yun's complexion suddenly turned gloomy as he looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "Young Yi, are you the one who has trained this dog? I must say you have done a terrible job. This dog has no manners. I am trying to say that you have failed in training it properly. If you cannot even train a dog, why don't let me help you? You fucker, no one would dare train this prince. I shall train your sorry ass instead." The wolf cub refused to admit being inferior. Well, he never was a well-mannered beast in the first place. Humph. Yungu snorted and once again shot an enormous beam of light towards him. However, before the wolf cub could react, Yi Shiwen appeared in front of him, like teleportation in general, and caught that beam of light in his hand. What happened? Now suddenly you want to protect this dog? Gu Yun looked annoyed as he said. He was obviously not satisfied with Yi Zaiwen's interference. You are a dog, you bastard. The wolf cub shouted again. If Yi Shiwen had not come in front of him, he would have already torn this son of a bitch to pieces. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, Protect? You're wrong. I don't need to protect him. To be honest, I did protect you from getting torn apart, and that is because I wanted to ask you for an explanation as to why would you suddenly attack him. He is too noisy, that's why. Gu Yun put on a serious face and said. So in your opinion, he is noisy. Very well, then in my opinion, you are too noisy. Yi Shiwen smirked, then immediately rushed towards Gu Yun like a fired bullet, producing a buzzing sound. Yi Zaiwen's skin turned golden and his palm went forward, releasing an endless golden beam of light towards Gu Yun. Hey, you two! Chu Jingkai stood up and was about to mediate between the two, but suddenly felt a strong aura stubbornly pressing him. It belonged to Li Fei. Li Fei slightly smiled and said, Brother Chu, why do you look so worried? You should just relax and watch the show. I also want to see the level of one of the strongest experts of the southeast region. Chu Jingkai was about to enter into a panicked state, but suddenly, Qi Fifan communicated via soul search and said, Don't be so anxious, it is difficult to say who will win the fight. Out of all of these people present here, only Qi Fifan had the best understanding of how Yi Shiwen generally operated in situations like this. He knew that Yi Shiwen would never engage an enemy he couldn't defeat. Not to mention, Yi Zaiwen's fights always tend to defy logic, as he had a track record of defeating opponents of much higher levels. Chu Jingkai sat down and began to watch the fight. However, he was preparing to intervene, just in case the fight went out of hand and someone's life was in danger. After all, he was a legendary level expert and it was his responsibility as the host as well. The true disciples were also watching the battle and were secretly pleased in their hearts that Yi Shiwen was teaching that arrogant prick a lesson. Although there were a lot of people who were not accustomed to seeing Yi Shiwen in battle, they could clearly sense his great power and skills. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was representing Yi Yuan School in this battle, or perhaps the entire 10 countries of the southeast region. Gu Yun was the favored disciple of TMU. The reputation of the entire southeast region was at stake here. Humph. Gu Yun also shot a beam of light towards the incoming golden beam attack. The two attacks collided in midair and led to a massive explosion, while the very next instant, Gu Yun's fist arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. This was the first time Yi Zaiwen's attack was so easily resolved. Having produced such a powerful disciple, TMU was indeed worthy of its title. Yi Zaiwen's dragon claw clashed with the dark cloud attack of Gu Yun and led to another explosion. Boom! The aftermath of this explosion was so terrifying that it broke through the barrier of space and spread out in all directions. Chu Jingkai immediately used a world law to fix the broken space and contained the aftermath of this explosion with a barrier. The true disciples looked scared and knew that Chu Jingkai had just now saved their lives. Although they were also in the same realm as Yi Shiwen and Gu Yun, the gap was huge between ordinary true disciples and the experts at Complete Truth Realm. Bang! The next collision caused shockwaves that hit viciously against the barrier and shook it to its core. The upper portion of the full moon peak along with surrounding space was immediately sent into oblivion. Chapter 278, Let Me Crush Your Arrogance. The complementary shock waves were still sweeping across the area. No one would have imagined that the battle between two true disciples could be this terrifying. Gu Yun's eyes flashed, even he did not expect Yi Shiwen to grab his fist attack. Even an expert of Complete Truth Realm should not have been able to stop this attack, let alone Yi Shiwen. Hoot! Gu Yun cried loud and long and moved forward like a streamer of light. His fist was wrapped in an inexhaustible divine light which instantly exploded to the size of a mountain and pounded down towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, without showing any hesitation, stuck his hand out and it instantly turned into a dragon claw and greeted the incoming attack. Boom! The two attacks collided fiercely and set off waves of rippling light and shock waves in the surroundings. Gu Yun was very strong, no wonder he was so rampant, but Yi Zaiwen's facial expression showed no change whatsoever. He once again went all out, his left palm summoned a golden coiling dragon whereas his right palm wreaked havoc by summoning a tyrannical attack like Han's Seal. Han's Seal instantly transformed into a gigantic mountain high in the sky, then, it suddenly dropped down towards Gu Yun. Both these attacks were unparalleled ancient martial art techniques. Yi Shiwen instantly routed Gu Yun's fist attack. Gu Yun had to jump back several steps to steer away from the range of these tyrannical attacks. There was no way he could possibly stand a chance against ancient mystical techniques. However, he recovered quickly and certainly couldn't allow Yi Shiwen to attack incessantly. He immediately punched towards Yi Shiwen and suddenly it seemed as if the sky itself would shatter into pieces. This was really a horrifying fist attack and couldn't be taken lightly. A large area of the sky appeared to be collapsing as the Quan Jin spread across the sky and began to bombard wantonly in all directions. Yi Shiwen used his right hand to make some strange gestures as if he was turning the pages of a book, and suddenly, Han's Seal fell down right upon the Quan Jin and completely annihilated it. It seemed as if the law of the earth itself was condensed into the Han's Seal. Gu Yun's Quan Jin did not withstand the unimaginable weight contained in the Han's Seal and directly collapsed. After the Han's Seal smashed Quan Jin, it further went towards Gu Yun at an incredibly fast speed, like a falling meteor. Bang! The dropping Han's Seal was just like a sierra falling from the sky and it pounded heavily upon him. Poof! Gu Yun spurted out blood and his body was blasted away horizontally due to the massive impact. How dare you injure me? Gu Yun roared like a crazed beast. His cries of horror shot up into the sky and resounded everywhere. Gu Yun adjusted his unbalanced posture in midair then immediately rushed forward and arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. The speed granted to him by his agility technique was unimaginably fast. In a blink of an eye, a giant fist blasted towards Yi Shiwen. His attack speed was really outstanding. Gu Yun's agility skill was approaching near perfection. If Yi Shiwen did not use devil wings, he would barely be able to keep up. Having such confidence and arrogance was indeed not without a reason, and perhaps his future achievements would actually be immeasurable. Is that all you got? Yi Shiwen sneered and activated Tyrant Body Technique, instantly maneuvered his palm to greet the incoming attack. Even though Gu Yun was incredibly fast, this couldn't act as an advantage as he was still unable to hurt Yi Shiwen. Boom! 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 The two sides continued to clash one after another and that caused the space to collapse again and again. These two are very strong, will surely reach legendary realm in the near future. Huang Luochen was amazed by the level of this battle and the potential demonstrated by Yi Shiwen and Gu Yun, even though it was only a truth-level battle. I never thought that the southeast region can produce such a master. To think he is actually able to fight on equal terms with Gu Yun. I guess he is not that bad of a choice as a potential candidate for the status of TMU disciple. Li Fei was somewhat amazed by Yi Zaiwen's potential but there was still a hidden punch in his tone. This is insane. No matter how much he tries, his attacks are simply unable to hurt Yi Shiwen. Yes indeed, Gu Yun has already tried so many times but is failing to land one effective hit on Yi Shiwen. But similarly, Yi Shiwen is unable to catch up with Gu Yun's speed. Their individual advantages are cancelling out each other, making it difficult for one party to gain an upper hand in battle. Is this the best you can do? Don't tell me this is the standard of TMU's treasured disciples. Yi Shiwen sneered while activating Tyrant Body Technique at its maximum. He had not even resorted to using gilded tyrant forms so far. Han's Seals smashed down one after another while Gu Yun did not dare to block them. He had come to understand the frightening power of these seals and knew that it was for his own good to stay away from them at any cost. Humph, so a little boy is trying to talk big, I see. Even if I cannot hurt you, you also can never expect to hurt me. Gu Yun said loudly with a stern look on his face. He still couldn't bring himself to acknowledge Yi Zaiwen's tyrannical strength. Yi Shiwen was a peerless genius of the southeast region but was still just another genius and nothing more. He, on the other hand, thought of himself as a special disciple of TMU, thereby holding a much superior status than Yishuan. However, he had already discovered the terror of Yishuan by now. It was too difficult to injure Yi Zaiwen's invincible body as none of his attacks worked so far. He was somewhat aggrieved because all he could do during the battle was use fast speed to dodge Yi Zaiwen's attacks. He truly never excelled in offensive battle strategy, instead he relied more on his speed to defeat his opponents. But, unlike most of his opponents, Yishuan not only possessed an unparalleled body as an ultimate form of defense but also possessed an ultimate offense-type secret technique, Hans Seal. If Yishuan was faster than him, then he wouldn't have survived this long in battle. Was it really possible for a genius like Yishuan to appear in a small place like Southeast region? Is that so? Yishuan smirked as he felt a sudden urge of defeating his opponent thoroughly to an extent of leaving them completely disheartened and dejected. A pair of golden devil wings appeared behind Yishuan all of a sudden. His imposing aura instantly exploded in all directions like a majestic boundless sea. Shwa! Yi Zaiwen's body suddenly blurred and disappeared from the spot where he was standing just now. What is this magical power? How is he so fast? The true disciples immediately lost the trail of Yishuan. Their eyes just couldn't follow Yishuan, who was moving at such an incredibly fast speed that it felt as if he vanished. Even Qi Fifan and the other half-step legendary level experts were shocked by Yi Zaiwen's speed. They never expected that his speed would be enhanced so dramatically by a pair of wings. Not to mention, these wings also worked towards neutralizing Gu Yun's only advantage, giving an edge to Yishuan in this battle. There was a look of disbelief on Li Fei's face as he was watching Yi Zaiwen's magical speed, which was much faster than Gu Yun's. In this case, Yishuan was holding all the advantages at the moment and Gu Yun was now in a serious situation where neither fight nor flight was an option. Li Fei was all set to stop this battle immediately, but suddenly, a strong coercion firmly suppressed him, making him immobile. At this time, Chu Jinkai's voice entered his ears. "Young Li, why do you look so anxious? Relax, just sit back and enjoy the show. I also want to see the true strength of a young genius from TMU." Li Fei's complexion suddenly paled when he was greeted by his own words, and that too in a similar fashion. Not to mention, the meaning hidden in these words was quite obvious. Chu Jinkai finished this sentence and immediately felt a joyous feeling in his heart. Now that he was finally able to vent his anger, Yishuan suddenly started to appear more pleasing to the eye. Bang! There came a loud noise, a human figure was kicked out in midair. It was Gu Yun who had been overtaken and kicked by Yishuan. This kick was strong enough to send him flying right towards the ground. He crashed heavily on the ground, making a big crater almost instantly. He immediately spurted a mouthful of blood while there was an incredible look in his eyes. This should not be happening. Gu Yun seemed confused, completely overtaken by deniability. He just couldn't accept the fact that Yi Zaiwen's speed surpassed his own. But, he was not willing to give up so easily and immediately used his best fist attack. However, Yi Zaiwen's face was expressionless as he was looking calmly at Gu Yun. Suddenly, a Hans seal smashed down from the sky and hit Gu Yun directly from above. Boom! Gu Yun was smashed on the ground, making a human-shaped hole in the ground. Damn, Gu Yun was unable to dodge one attack and look what happened to him. Good, well done, that idiot was trampled to death. The fucker had it coming. The wolf cub clamored in a loud voice and looked quite satisfied. From the very start, Gu Yun was nothing more than an arrogant bastard who was simply an eyesore for everyone. The true disciples were literally speechless when they heard the wolf cub's comment. They did not know where Yishuan found this weird beast, but no one dared to question Yishuan or his judgment. Gu Yun's speed was already approaching the ultimate level of Truth Realm, but the wolf cub was able to dodge his attack so easily. This alone was enough to establish one fact, that the wolf cub was stronger than them. These TMU disciples are nothing but mediocre. They do not deserve to be associated with legendary TMU, to be honest. Yishuan smirked then turned away. Gu Yun was really powerful, therefore he was so full of himself. Any other disciple of same level definitely wouldn't stand a chance against Yi Shiwen. In fact, at present, Yi Shiwen had enough strength to defeat anyone in the truth realm. Li Fei's complexion was pale but did not have the means to act because Chu Jingkai was blocking his path. Although he was very strong, was still nothing in comparison to a legendary level expert. Yi Shiwen did not turn back to look and left the scene along with the wolf cub. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.